Sometimes you just need to take the slips out and bowl defensively. And you also need to be careful with your computer's defense as well. If you need a VPN, go Nord. NordVPN.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months and gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. So put in some dot balls and turn them into maidens via NordVPN.com/Kimber.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 20 of the Overthrows podcast. I'm Behram Kazi, who you can find at Def Mango on Twitter. And with me, as always, is Jared Kimber, who you can find literally everywhere. And in the comments, we've already had a few super chats. You guys have to wait for those. We'll be answering them at the end of the show. And Abhiram Velamuri, ABCDEF, Funk Lastster, and Sankalp Verma. Who else do we have over here? Lenny Rodriguez, Sharatan KD, Indie Guy, Anmol Shrivats. All of you, thank you so much for already being here. Arco is here as well. And just hold tight. We'll get to your questions. But before that, Jared, 3 major teams are on the verge of first round exits in the ongoing T20 World Cup, which makes us wonder why we haven't had a 20-team T20 World Cup in years gone by.
It's funny, isn't it? It's the amount of times over the last 17 years I've been reporting on cricket that like mainstream cricket fans will just say things like, the other team's no good, they ruin everything, blah blah blah. Even when there were facts against them. It's the same with women's cricket. Women will never be good at cricket, blah 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 blah. Women don't like cricket, and so well, it turns out that these other countries and these women, they actually, as 2 individual groups, really like the cricket. And look, I think it's huge for Bob Woolmer and Richard Doan, the sort of the people, and some of the other people at the ICC have helped facilitate this. The ICC gets a lot of bad raps for associate cricket, but they actually did a great job in growing a lot of these countries, which is why we're in this situation now. Then they made a lot of terrible jobs at their executive level when they decided not to let any of these countries come in. And, what we're seeing, I didn't know much about Canadian cricket. That they would probably... Them and Uganda would probably be, I'd seen a little bit more of Uganda maybe, but they'd be the teams that I didn't know as much of recent times. They've been fine. Oman have not, done anything special, but Oman's a decent side, and I like the way they play cricket as well. Like Papua New Guinea haven't almost stole 1 game and then almost stole 2 games, really, I suppose, depending on how you look at it. They've made the tournament better. And there's still going to be a lot of one-sided games and games that we could skip. And if you're thinking to yourself at the moment, I don't want to watch Nepal versus Sri Lanka, when that comes up, I think that's a more than fair decision to make. Or Uganda West Indies was a game where I was just like, I think I know how this one's going to go. I will set my alarm and watch a little bit of it, but I'm pretty sure I know where that's going to go. But that's also the case sometimes between the major teams as well, right?
Yeah.
It's been a really, really crazy tournament, and I've enjoyed it. Outside of a few things that are just stupid. So far, I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, likewise. It has been crazy indeed. And with the associates, I feel like when they face off against each other, it makes for some really compelling cricket. But then obviously we've had some major results and upsets in this tournament, and it's only been a week or 10 days old, something like that. Anyway, the way I've structured today's Overthrows is that we're going to go group by group, and we're going to touch the major themes and the major teams in each of those groups, and we'll start in alphabetical.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah. Chronological alphabetical order. And what better place to start than Pakistan, failing to defend 160 versus the USA, after which they were unable to chase 120 versus India. Finalists in the last edition in 8 tournaments. They've made the semi-finals 6 times. They've won it once. They've made the finals thrice. And now they need Qudrat to nizam like it's never nizamed before. They require Ireland and India to beat the USA. And then they also have to defeat Canada and Ireland handsomely. And if you've seen the weather forecast in Florida, it seems like it's pretty much all but over for the men in green. But then Jared, Qudrat did nizam for Pakistan. They won an important toss versus India, right? They had the best of the conditions with both bat and ball. The sun came out in the second innings. They have just themselves to blame for being in this situation.
Yeah, it was funny. I think it was on the final word. Jeff Lemon was saying they gave that game away, and I was like, when did they have that game? What was what? Like, and there were a lot of fans who were saying that. Like, a lot of fans were like, India's done. I was like, and I think India got to 8-1 or something at one stage. And I'm watching it going, I must be watching a completely different game here, because what I'm seeing is a team behind the run rate who is struggling all the way through. And if you want to know where Pakistan lose that game, it's the 5th and 6th overs of the first innings when they're bowling to India, when they allow whatever it was, 25, 30 runs off a couple of overs there. That's actually when they lost this game, when they couldn't take a catch, when they couldn't stop the ball, when they were bowling terribly. And then the Harris Ralph over as well later on when he came on was it the 8th over, 9th over?
It was the 10th over.
Oh, it was the 10th. Yeah.
That's the reason why India got to 80 in 10, and they were at 50 for 2 after the power play. Pakistan were 35 for 1 after their power play. And you know the ball is hard at the start, you make use of those conditions. It only got harder.
But what were Bangladesh at the start of their power play today against?
Not many.
And they batted, I thought they batted really, really well. And they were about 35 as well, I reckon. Right? Like maybe 30, a handful of runs either way. The point is, it isn't easy. And I think you're wrong. You said that the conditions were better for Pakistan all the way through. I actually think it gets harder to bat on this wicket as the game gets on. The only games I would say that maybe wasn't the case was not the Bangladesh one. The Bangladesh one was a bit iffy, South Africa. But there was one other one that I've now forgotten where I thought the wicket pretty much stayed the same. But usually it doesn't matter because kind of a few of these teams are chasing nothing. Look, the USA one is the big issue here, right? Yeah. When you have a pitch like the New York pitch and you're going up against a team like India, it's at best you've got, a 40% chance of winning anyway. They might have got themselves to a 60% and 65% chance at times. They never got above the rate. Yeah. They always had to deal with Jasprit Bumrah. And eventually, I do think the wicket got a lot worse in the back half of that game, in the back half of that innings, which actually also happened to India. So I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, because I put money on India. I was positive India were going to win that game, right? At the halfway mark, absolutely positive that India was going to win that game. So I'd be disingenuous to say that Pakistan threw it away, because I never thought Pakistan were in front. Right.
Prior to the game, I was previewing the game for Pro Sports, and I said that Pakistan can only win this game one way: if they bowl first and bowl India out for 110. And I hate to be this right? I mean, that's exactly what it was. I mean, if
those
I look
extra
at the
9 runs, that Harris Ralph over really cost you your prediction, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But really, Pakistan are in the position they're in because of the USA game. Right?
Yeah.
Where they played way worse against USA than they did against India. They had some really good performances against India. Against USA, they lost a bunch of early wickets.
Yep.
Then they rebuilt, but Babar Azam had the handbrake on because he was a little bit worried about a collapse. Then they had a second collapse, even though he was out there with a handbrake on. He could never take it off, really, even though he got a couple of sixes away. They never scored enough runs. Their bowlers looked either too eager to take wickets or too timid. There was no in between of this is where we need to bowl on this wicket. And then they had a fantastic run where they almost stole that game. And then that horrendous moment in the super over. I'd be much more concerned about that. God. But this whole idea, I've seen things like, the players owe it to Pakistan, from former players and things. I'm just like, what are we talking about here? They got rolled by an associate who's feeling it at the moment. And then they almost beat a better team than them. I mean, that's the truth. They almost beat a better team than them. But, they don't put enough pressure. If you want to know the real difference, I think, between the two sides, and three sides, if you want to put USA in. USA put pressure back on you when they're batting because they look for sixes. India, through Rohit and Virat, who both went out, but then Rishabh and Akshar kept putting pressure back on Pakistan. Pakistan would every now and again run at a ball and try and hit it over deep cover for 6, and then just go straight back into their holes every time.
Yeah.
Right?
Pretty much.
And that's both games. Both games they did that, on the good wicket and on the bad wicket. And it's like, you need to be able to continually put pressure on these other sides at the moment. And I think that's where they went wrong. But look, these things happen. It's a World Cup. And as you said before, the associates are getting better. And that, Ireland could still beat Pakistan as well. Like, you know,
Absolutely.
Canada
I mean,
played some
Canada
cricket in this tournament. Yeah.
could beat Pakistan in New York, right? I feel like if I look at both their games, the batters did really let the team down. I feel, especially versus the USA. If you take Shaheen's blitz at the end out of the equation, they don't get to 159. Then they definitely lose that game, right? I think they underutilized their power play in both of those games. First game, 3 for 30. Second game, also, I felt like the best of the conditions were in the first 6 overs. They kind of botched that. They haven't shown enough intent running between the wickets. I feel like that's an area where other teams have done extremely well, and Pakistan and perhaps Sri Lanka have really, bottled it over there. And, maybe it wasn't as big of a bottle job as people are making it to be, but it was still a bottle job versus India. You still get 120 runs because now you have to, play accordingly in the second innings, even if the wicket is hard. Imad Wasim wasted his matchup versus Akshar in that over. I thought that was a big moment. Rizwan's wicket was a big moment.
Okay, so let's go back to this. This is where I think we're not factoring in the pitch. Akshar bowled 4 balls short outside off stump.
Yeah.
Right?
He tried the same cut shot every single time.
Now, if he tried to drag that to the leg side on that pitch, I reckon he probably spoons it up in the air. We've seen multiple people on that wicket try and force it back down the ground and be caught and bowled or caught at short cover, right? He played the right shot to the ball and missed it, right? Part of the reasons he missed it is because that is not an easy pitch to time the ball on, right? Now, if you really want to have a go at Pakistan, I don't think it's saying Imad Wasim made a mistake there. I think it's sending Imad Wasim out with Rizwan.
Yeah.
When you could have sent out someone who could hit some boundaries straight away and put some more pressure on. So again,
Also,
I just think we look at these things. No one, I promise you this, today in the Bangladesh-South Africa game, I told everyone, right, back Bangladesh when they're bowling. And the minute and South Africa bowl, if they make over 95 runs or 85 runs, back South Africa when they're bowling, right?
Yeah.
And have a look at that game. It's exactly what I did for the India game. It's exactly what I've been doing for multiple games. And, it's the same when Canada got, what they get, 135 or whatever it was against Ireland. I was all in on Canada, man, for the same reason. I'm not betting on the teams, right?
You're betting on the
betting
conditions.
on the wicket. It is hard, and it gets harder to bat on the longer you're out there. And you saw with Bangladesh, once they lost a wicket, the new batters came out. When Ifti came out and when Imad came out, it got harder and harder for new batters the later it is into the innings. So that
but then again, you have to consider that Rizwan was out there for a while, and if Bumrah is coming in for a fresh new spell, you don't do that on the first ball. That is a brain fade.
No
right?
one's disagreeing with that. That is
stupid. Also, Jared, we keep
but
talking about the pitch, but
okay.
Pakistan missed full tosses, right? The
Yeah.
pitch was out of the equation.
What about Rohit's shot?
True.
Do you know what I mean? We have to be honest here. This is a tough wicket. And really, I would say Rizwan and Rohit are 2 very good tough wicket players, right? And a lot of people, I've seen a lot of tweets going, oh, look at what Rishabh Pant can do in this wicket. No one else can do it. He's got a control percentage of about 55 in the 2 innings he's played here. He just, for some reason, no one can catch him when he hits the ball up in the air, right? And so this is cricket unlike what we know it before. That's why the India game, I'm willing to say, look, it came down to the end. Pakistan's mistakes were more important than India's mistakes, right? And sometimes that is the difference. The issue here is not that game. The issue here is that they lost to the USA from probably in 3 different ways throughout that game, right?
I mean, they bowled a million wides, including that super over, right? And then they also...
How many runs in the super over?
18 or 17, and there was one boundary. One boundary. The rest were wides, and they ran off each wide. So
the bowler couldn't execute his ball. The wicketkeeper couldn't pick it up. And they just kept doing the same plan over and over again, right? Like... And even with the choice of the batters, it's like, well, what? Why?
Why was Fakhr not facing in the super over, right? You've got a left-handed bowler. You take the angle out. You send in Fakhr Zaman, the one guy who you can trust to hit a 6 off the first delivery. So that was strange. I mean, Shaheen has looked like a shadow of his former self, if we're being real. And I do feel for Naseem Shah. My heart does ache for that kid because otherwise I'm quite impartial. But he took 3 for 21 versus India and batted better than most of Pakistan's batters. Got an unbeaten 10 off 4. So spare a thought for him. And I mean, Amir and Haris were okay. They were all right in that game as well. But Pakistan have been bang average in all 3 departments. Their fielding was so
Why
bad.
was this one about Pakistan? I mean, they're finished. I mean, I suppose net run rate means they can still get through. Is that right?
I mean, they can, but the weather predictions
Yeah,
suggest
as you
they
said
won't,
before.
right?
Yeah, net
That's
run
the
rate
issue.
is their problem, is not their problem. So so they've still got a chance there. India's going to get through. Ireland are gone, realistically, and so
The
you.
USA have a solid chance, and a washout for the USA helps them go through. And I mean, ultimately, poor fielding will always cost you big games. But anyway, moving on to India, right? They created history by defending their lowest ever total in T20Is versus Pakistan, 120 to be exact, and then they rolled over Ireland for 96. Rohit got a 50 in that game and was actually executing his pull and hook shot on that surface where no one can do that, right? You do not pull for the life of you on that surface. And Rishabh Pant has probably been the best batter in New York. I think we can all say that quite comfortably. And Jasprit Bumrah across 2 games has taken 5 wickets for no runs and showed us all exactly why he is probably unarguably the best all-format cricketer in contemporary cricket. It's been a solid start for the men in blue. But what do you think they need to improve on over here?
Look, they have, of all the teams, have probably showed the most intent on this wicket, and
Yes.
that Island game could have got tricky. Like, no one's ever going to look back on that and say, "Oh, India were ever in any danger." But having a look at every other single game at this ground, I think we can now say India had some danger there, and they knocked that danger away by showing intent. They won the Pakistan game by showing intent. They've gone away. Their seam bowling is a little bit iffy. We know Siraj can run hot and cold. Arshdeep doesn't look in great form. Hardik probably wasn't in great form for good periods of time, although he's ended up with fairly decent figures, but that's partly because that wicket is helpful. But Arshdeep will go out and Kuldeep will come in.
Yes,
So
sir.
if I'm working for India at the moment, and if, Rohit rang me up at the moment and said, what do you think? I'll be like, just keep doing what you're doing. You managed to handle these conditions and you defended that total really well and you played really well against Ireland. Just keep doing what you're doing. I think they can get better as a side once they move to the Caribbean, just because I think the third seamer is their weakest part of their game. Arshdeep's bowled some absolute horrendous trash on a wicket he's not the only one. Him and Rabada is another one where it's like every other seamer looks incredible, and then Arshdeep and Rabada are like, what do we do on this wicket that everyone is loving? So we've seen he struggled a little bit, but he just comes out, right? And then you bowl more spin as well. Like they can bowl the 2-finger spinners more.
Ashdeep goes out, who, by the way, has conceded 30 plus in both New York games, which is crazy. And then if Kuldeep comes in, of course, looking at a better side. Rishabh Pant has looked like their best batter, and Jasprit Bumrah is a cheat code, right? And he literally was the difference between India and Pakistan on the day. I would go on to say that. And I mean, India are definite contenders, but I feel like we need to see them outside of New York as well to know more.
Yeah, I just think they'll be better outside of New York, so I'm not particularly worried about that.
By far, they have been the best team in New York. And them scoring 50 in the power play versus Pakistan killed that game. That's what I feel. Anyway, let's come to the USA, who are unbeaten in their home World Cup, which is friggin' amazing. And as things stand, they look solid to qualify for the Super 8s, which is also a wild statement. Monank Patel scored 50 versus Pakistan, and Saurabh Netravalkar 2 for 18 in 4 overs versus Pakistan. The left-arm pacer has probably one of the best arcs in modern-day cricket. This guy played an Under-19 World Cup for India. Then he goes to Cornell, of all universities in the States, to study. He's a software engineer at Oracle, has currently taken leave to play this World Cup. He sings and plays the ukulele as well, is damn good at it, and has now won a World Cup game versus Pakistan. He is living every brown dad's ultimate dream, Saurabh Netravalkar, and he is completely winning at life. What a guy.
And his mum's still like, why didn't you become a doctor? Look, I've watched him a fair bit. He's not like an elite bowling talent in the way that, say, Ali Khan is. And he doesn't have that high upside like someone like Aaron Jones, but he's that kind of, what would you put him in, that sort of Craig Young, Barry McCarthy level of cricketer, where you just like, when he's used the right way and the conditions are in his favor, you have to go through him. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like there are better players at associate level, and he's not particularly fast, and he's not always deadly accurate, but he's got some really good skills. And I actually, this is going to sound weird, I actually like the way he bowled earlier in the game rather than towards the end. I thought he just bowled beautifully. He really had Pakistan under such pressure just by the way he was bowling. And, they've been very strong in the power play for a while now, USA, and he's a big part of that. And so, absolutely. No, it was absolutely great. I mean, what a start. I know it started some sort of flame wars between baseball fans and cricket fans. And I'm sure that's annoying for people involved, but I'm not involved, so I don't care. But
hey, when people see Stephen Taylor's catch in the slips, cricket wins, baseball loses, 100%.
But the point is that cricket has entered those conversations again, right? And so there is now, New York Times get abused for their bad subheading on their article about was it? I think it was
119 to 113. I think it was brilliant. You get the point across to American masses.
It doesn't matter anyway, right? But the point is, we want more of those mistakes because we want different markets to start to take it to cricket, right? That's the whole point of this. USA and Canada have done brilliant things for cricket in their countries at the moment. And we've seen Namibia do that in previous World Cups, and Uganda having their first, World Cup win. And Netherlands are playing good cricket again. And that's what we need. That's the sport. And USA at home, it's the market that can change everything for cricket into the future. And, so many people have obviously been involved. You and I have done a podcast on sort of the history of USA cricket. I just think it's great. And I love the way they play as well. They try and hit sixes. They've got a couple of, decent seam options, and they've got a couple of kind of more all-roundery guys that they try and, cheat with. They've got Harmeet bowling his sort of underarm sliders. It's probably I was trying to work this out the other day who he is. It's probably Jayasuriya, isn't it? That's kind of who he is maybe the most like. That sort of just on a slant into you the whole time.
You're right.
But yeah, no, I've been enjoying watching, bits of USA cricket for a long time now, and they're playing with a freedom that I didn't really expect from them in this World Cup. And it's been captivating. And if this is it, if they only get the 2 wins and India smash them in the face and Ireland finally work out how to play cricket again, then we've still had a great time from them.
Absolutely. I mean, Aaron Jones has been one of the best batters on display. I would take Aaron Jones over any Pakistani middle order batter currently. And I also think...
Would you take Aaron Jones over Nicholas Curtin, though?
Ooh, that's a tough one because I really like Curtin's bat swing, right? And I love left-handed batters. But also, I think USA are really smart. Like, they brought in Ken Jige, the slow left armer versus Pakistan, and played 2 slow left armers versus them. He got 3 for 30. And Netravalkar, as you said, with the new ball, 3 overs, 1 for 8. And I saw this guy for the first time when USA beat Bangladesh not too long ago in a T20I series. I was impressed straight away. They've got some good cricketers. And now slowly, maybe they get some more infrastructure and structure for cricket around in the USA because, well, they've won, so maybe that helps. But I mean, they have every likelihood of going through to the Super 8s. But even if that doesn't happen, it's been a wonderful ride.
It's already a win. They're playing with someone else's money at this point. They've been fantastic.
Absolutely.
If they made it to the second round, let's be honest, they will probably get dragged by a bunch of teams. I mean, I hope not, but they will probably just get dragged by a bunch of teams. If they don't make it to the second round and there's heartbreak, well, there's another story, right? And, just all credit goes to the players and the staff, because I don't think Stuart Law's been coached for that long, because
probably not.
I was going to do some work. I was asked to have a meeting with USA Cricket about the future of their game and everything when it comes to analysis and all those sorts of things. And I don't even know, and it wasn't that long ago I had that meeting, Bayram, and I don't think Stuart Law was coach at the time, because if he was coach at the time, he probably would have been in on that meeting. But that just tells you how weird and wild it has been. Yeah,
absolutely. And also, of course, I am half Canadian as well. So happy that Canada finally became the 22nd team to win a World Cup game in the history of T20 World Cups. They held their nerve to defeat Ireland, and I love that because they nearly defeated the USA as well. Yes,
yeah. Was that Canada's first win over a test-playing nation since 2003, or is that...
It has to be, because they defeated Bangladesh in 2003 in the ODI World Cup, remember?
Was that Bangladesh? I know they beat someone.
Wasn't
I
it?
can't remember back now.
I'm pretty sure it was Bangladesh.
They had an incredible little run there. Yeah, because they haven't been around for a while. Look, I actually thought, I mean, they probably stuffed up the USA game by having no fifth bowler, and they brought the fifth bowler in against Ireland, and instantly they looked like a better side, even though it was a spinner. But of all the bowling attacks in this tournament, and this is going to sound so fucking random when I say this out loud, but of all the bowling attacks in this tournament, only South Africa probably have an attack that is more suited to the New York pitch. Because they've got a couple of big, tall guys who just bang it into the wicket. And you can, even Marco Janssen, who's tall, doesn't always get it right on this wicket. And Rabada hasn't been banging it in. And you look at India, they have Jasper Bumrah, but Siraj and Arshdeep don't really bang it into the wicket. And you go through all the different teams. So that's, again, why I was all in on Canada. I was just like, they've got guys who are just going to hit the middle of that wicket. And I really like the way they went about it, picking that extra bowler, backing their batters, all those sorts of things has worked for them. They've got, I've now completely forgot, but they've got 2 games to go as well, don't they?
They've got Pakistan and New York, which can you rule them out at this point? Of course not. I'm just happy that one of my nations has won a game. Go Canada.
Oh my God. And then they've got India, right? So they've got the 2 hard games to come. But again, they have shown us, and they're a fair way down our expectations. If you'd have told me that that Canada won a game, I'd be like, it must have been a thriller against USA where everything went right. Yeah. And at this stage, they're setting themselves up for 1 win and perhaps even 2 if Pakistan just mail it in.
Yeah, and I mean, Ireland is still a considerable victory for them because it is a test-playing nation, which everyone seems to forget, by the way. Everyone calls them an associate nation, and it gets on my nerves at times. But anyway, let's move on to group number B. Scotland. Group number B. Scotland have put England, to the sword early in the T20 World Cup. Munsey and Jones scored 90 versus Joss Butler's team in 10 overs before, that game was washed out. And since then, they have comfortably defeated Namibia. And then they chased down 151 versus Oman in 13.1 overs, which has given them a massive lead on net run rate. And that has made England sweat and is currently making England sweat. I think Brad Wheel and Brad Curry have both been really good with the ball, as has Mark Watt. And then also with the bat, there are just so many batters who've done well. Jones and Munsey up top. They've gotten runs. Munsey in particular looks very, very devastating. Brandon McMullen scored, 61, unbeaten of 31 in this game versus Oman. And then Leask and Berrington have showed us that they can hit a long ball. They won that Namibia game, right? These are your boys, Jared. And they are on the verge of Super 8 qualification. How does that feel?
I was there towards the start of the journey. I would say they probably started the journey a little bit before me. Probably around 2016 is really where they started it. But this is kind of what we all thought they could do. This is the bowling attack that they always wanted to assemble. And, through injuries, through players retiring, through players moving away from Scotland and England and all sorts of things, it never quite worked. But I remember this being the dream bowling lineup that was written down on paper. And, as far as batting goes, they've lost Callum McLeod and Kyle Kutzer, who are fantastic players, right? But whether those players were specifically T20 players, and because Scotland have been really pushing T20 players coming through, they've been able to replace them, with Jones and
McMullen. Brandon McMullen. Brand ball.
I almost said it, Brendan McCullum there, just because I've been making that joke all day.
Yeah.
Look, so this is what they wanted to do. And I think it was when Kyle took over, he basically said, I want us to score a lot quicker. I want us to play, a lot more, probably like England at that stage, I would have thought is where they got their inspiration from, but it might have been New Zealand as well. And he went out there and started smashing it, and they've just continued to follow that. And so they are a dangerous side. The Afghanistan game was really interesting. The Namibia game was really interesting because they got themselves in a terrible position, partly because of our man Brandon there, just forgetting where the crease was at one stage. Because I thought they had that chase pretty comfortable. I thought they had good matchups against the bowlers. They had the small boundary on one side. They had a few things in their favour. And then they just kept losing wickets. And then once Leask and Berrington came out, and I've seen Leask play cricket a lot. When he comes out and he tries to hit a 6 straight away, he quite often does it because of the sort of player he is. But when he does that, it's usually through nervous energy. And he didn't do that. And he came out and he batted really, really smart for a couple of balls. And I was like, I think Namibia are in big trouble here. I think I was on a group chat with some friends and I was like, it doesn't matter what the odds say to you at the moment. I think Scotland is about to absolutely train that. So that was a good win. But it also shows that they're not like this train of a side, right? We saw the best of them against England. partly because of the conditions. They didn't have to bat tough all the way through there, but that still would have
And
been a tough win for them.
they hit reverse sweeps of Adil Rashid, which I will never forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Munty can basically reverse sweep anyone. I don't even think it's not even like a reverse sweep for him. He just he forgets which side of the bat he holds. But you know, their record probably flatters them a little bit because the game against England was washed out. I'm not saying that they might not have won that because they might have, but it probably was going to get a little bit closer. And then on the other side of that, you have the two other associate teams that they've gone up against, right?
Yeah.
We'll get a much better sense of how good Scotland are when they play Australia. I expect Australia to win that, but I do think that Scotland play the kind of game that is very different to other associate teams. In that there is a bit like Afghanistan used to be with their bowlers, right? When they were an associate team, where you're just like, there's weaknesses here and they might fall, whatever, but they can also get on a roll. And if they get on a roll, they're not particularly easy to stop. And if you compare that to, Namibia and, Canada and, some of these other teams, Papua New Guinea, they're just they chug along and they put pressure on you in little bits and hope that you eventually make a mistake. Michael Jones is not that kind of player. Like, you bowl the wrong length to Michael Jones and he's going to put you onto the solar panels, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they are dangerous in a different way. Yeah. I wasn't making that up, Bayram. I saw that happen. You were you won't believe this, dude. That actually happened.
It actually happened like 2 or 3 times across multiple games. I think
it did, didn't it?
Australia also hit the solar panels. I forget who was it. Maybe it was one of Head of Warner.
I hope they're sponsored, by the way, the solar panels, because I'm really worried about the amount of money that's costing Barbados cricket.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? Scotland have a net run rate of plus 2.7 or something like that, whereas England are minus 1.8. So all they need to do, is lose not so badly versus Australia.
And their games last. Their games after the other, so they're going to know what the thing is. And look, I think we saw the Australian fast bowlers got whacked the other night. Some of them fought back well. I think Cummins bowled well and Zampa bowled well, but it's not like, I don't think I've looked at Australia so far and thought they were awesome. There were times when England were on top of them. They sort of fell in a heap a little bit when the ball started to spin. Mark Watt is going to be a challenge on in certain conditions. It's a flat, the thing that helps Australia and doesn't help Scotland, I think, is that it's a flat going to be at Antigua, which is probably already looks like the best batting wicket in this whole competition.
It really does.
I mean, we haven't got to St. Lucia yet, but St. Lucia might look even better. But right at the moment, that might be an issue just because Australia can score 220, 230, 240.
Very true.
If Travis Head goes absolutely nuts, Munsey, Jones, McMullen, Leask, all those guys, that's not even a level that they can dream of at the moment. Yeah. So that would be my biggest concern. But on the other side, flat pitches against the Scottish batters, and they'll be backing themselves as well.
Yeah. And I mean, if there's a washout in one of the England games, then that's it. Scotland are through. And England are yet to beat a European team in the T20 World Cup in history, right? So there's that bit of nugget over there. And coming to England, of course, someone is also, Genial Mehta has asked for the math for England. So basically, in the position that they're in, England need to beat Oman and Namibia convincingly. Yeah. Another good thing is that they also play in Antigua, right? So that'll help them. And they also need to hope that Australia steamrolls Scotland because they are at like a disparity of 4 point something when it comes to net run rate with Scotland?
So Scotland is 2.1 and
it's 2.1.
And England is minus 1.8.
So almost 4.
Yeah, basically 4, right?
That's crazy.
So if Scotland beat Australia, then England's done. If England somehow managed to lose either of those games, obviously England's done. But the most likely thing is that Australia beats Scotland and England beats Namibia and Oman. So then it's going to be, Scotland will know what they need to chase against Australia. Or, sorry, not what they need to chase, but what they need to do against Australia and give themselves a good chance there. But England's not playing brilliant cricket. They got themselves in a good position against Australia and completely gave it back and just fizzled out. And they had good batters at the crease who didn't look like getting there. Namibia and Oman have nagging, awkward bowlers that could cause them some issues. But I do think playing on that better surface is quite handy for them. Yeah. So that should spur them on. And we'll see how they go from there. But at the moment, you just have to think that Scotland is the more likely to go through because they have the points. Yeah, because they have the points and they have the net run rate boost. But I think England just needs to play to 80% of their best against those other two sides, and they might still be able to get in ahead of Scotland. Like that's, we see this a lot early in these World Cups, isn't it? Where we're like, oh, there's no way this team could come back from here. And it's like, well, actually, Scotland could get bowled out for 80 against Australia.
I feel that's the big one, right? I trust England to win handsomely versus Oman and Namibia, but I mean, potentially, like in theory, they should. But Australia steamrolling Scotland, is that going to happen? That might decide their fate. Also, Jared, they've conceded 291 runs in 30 overs that they've bowled in this World Cup. That is ridiculously high. And with the bat, they've only got one dig out there because they couldn't bat versus Scotland. But, Salt and Butler were doing great until Zampa derailed their party. After that, they were quite awful and showed the conditions were difficult. But, with rain in and around the area, a washout could knock them out. I feel like they are a bit unlucky that they are in this position because of a washout. I feel there's that.
I think if they got 2 washouts, even if they were going to lose to Scotland, like they didn't even get the chance to lose to Scotland, if they get another washout, then, that's part of the problem. But they won't be the first team. I think there was a Champions Trophy that Australia might have had a similar thing where they lost one game and then had a washout, and that was kind of enough. Like and I'm sure there's World Cups I'm not thinking of as well where similar things have happened before. Like if you lose games, you put your destiny in the hands of weather, right? And if you win games, you don't. And that's the situation that they put themselves in this World Cup. And if they do have 2 games washed out, I think that's very, very, it's very fair for everyone to say, well, wait, what's going on here? But at the same time, they don't beat Australia, and they got absolutely whacked by Australia. They've made it a lot harder for themselves already, right? Like, I mean, they could have lost that game to Scotland. I still think they probably get over, but I was like not massively in on England in that game.
Interesting. I did think that 109 and 10 overs with England's batting, I mean, surely they're going to give it a proper go, but then again, we'll never know.
There's 2 issues. Scotland don't have very good death bowling, but that was a tricky wicket, and so it could have gone either way. But we don't know. So they are where they are.
Yeah, crazy how the finalists of the previous T20 World Cup are on the verge of first round exits. Anyway, Australia, they batted according to the modern T20 template versus England. And I feel like, you look at Head and Warner, they both got out in the power play, but they also scored 74 runs. And that is ultimately what set them up for that 200 plus score. They are the only team to score a 200 plus score in this World Cup. I mean, Scotland would have gotten there versus Oman if they batted the full 20 overs, but that's still something. And then with the ball versus England, Zampa happened, followed by Stoinis. So there was a shot of the Love Cafe, which barely ever goes wrong. Versus Oman, Marcus Stoinis stole the show, 67 with the bat, 3 for 19 with the ball. Barring Mitch Starc, perhaps, I feel like all the bowlers have done well. Even the seamers have hit their cutters really well, the Hazelwoods and Cummins, and I thought Nathan Ellis was fine as well, right? I do feel as a batting side, Australia looked like the best one in this T20 World Cup. And the template that they're playing, it is an antithesis to taking it deep. And that is what most teams fall prey to. Pakistan fell prey to that, right? I feel like taking it deep as a philosophy in T20 cricket is on the ventilator, if not entirely dead, Jared.
Well, I mean, it goes back to what we were saying about India before, right? Like, if you look at what Australia did to England, they won that game in the power play.
Yes.
That's the difference. Now, England made a lot of errors. And I would say 2 games in a row, England just stuffed up. So against Scotland, when they bowled spin to Munsey early on, I think you might have been in the group chat, and I was just like, why are we doing this? This is not what you do to George Munsey. Why give an associate team a leg up for no reason? And then against Australia, it's like, I'm pretty sure Travis Head has a really good strike rate against off spin as well.
Yeah.
But they got through 1 over of off spin.
And then Will Jacks bowled the second.
And then Will Jacks bowled the second to the short boundary.
Yes.
Right? Like, it just... there was a couple of times in that game where I was just like, I don't think they're quite thinking this through at the level that they need to. But let's go back to Australia. They are playing attacking cricket. They broke through a glass ceiling on that wicket that we didn't even know that you could make, even though they fizzled a little bit. I don't think they were massively impressive against Oman either. So they've had a couple of games where they've been good, but I don't think they've reached their peak yet. And the Mitchell Starc thing isn't going to go away, right? And who knows how far they'll have to drag that out, because he will eventually play a good game, and once he does, then it's hard to drop him because his good games are usually so loud. So
he'll save it for the knockouts. The semis,
most probably, yeah. Maybe he just needs a lot of games to get himself into rhythm in T20 cricket. I don't know.
Perhaps.
But yeah, look, they've been impressive. I said beforehand, I thought they were of all the things the most likely to win. I had England quite high. I don't anymore. based on the way that they've been playing. But yeah, Australia, I think, have been very impressive from what I've seen.
What I loved about that innings was that not a single batter got to 50. The highest score was Warner's 39, and they crossed 200. And that is the way I like to see teams play T20 cricket, especially when, in Barbados, very clearly you had to maximize the power play because the conditions got really, really difficult after the 10-over mark. Once the ball starts gripping, the spinners come into play, the cutters come into play from the fast bowlers. I think Australia looked like, the strongest team to me just as of now. Of course, this might change. And also they became the second team to hit the solar panels versus England. So England are the true culprits for all that money that Barbados has lost, right? Just to wrap up the group, and then we'll take a break. Namibia, they have been a team which have done well in the T20 World Cup in the past. David Wiese is David Wiese. They have him. And then Gerhard Erasmus, I felt, was kind of unlucky to be on the losing side versus Scotland. 2 for 29 with the ball, a 50 with the bat. Do you think they have one more win in them?
No, I think we've seen their best of this tournament. I suppose if something happens with England, of all the teams who could probably bother England, maybe they are, just because they will hang around. Look, Namibia is a really solid team with no weaknesses, but no massive strengths. And I've been saying that for a long time now, and we're seeing it again. But yeah, they've probably had the best of their World Cup and probably let themselves down a little bit against Scotland in the end. Losing the game against Scotland, that's fine. Losing it as easily as they did, I think, is a bit of a gut punch to them. They're probably not going to beat Australia, but who knows what emotional state or what England. I mean, if England need to score at like 20 runs and over against them, they're a disciplined side who do things correctly. I don't know. And, if it was on one of the other wickets, I would be more in favor of Namibia. But I cannot. Namibia just don't have a really top end when it comes to batting speeds. They just don't bat that fast. And so I can't see them winning another game. And, the same with Oman.
Oman cannot buy a victory right now. Like, no chance.
Well, they had a chance and they didn't get it, and it's got worse for them all the way through. So, Look, I think if those two teams were playing England on a different surface, I'd be a little bit more interested. And maybe the fact that England has to go so hard actually loosens. When I was working for Scotland, we had to beat Netherlands at one stage in I can't remember, we were chasing 180 or 190, and we had to score it in 12 or 13 overs or something ridiculous. It completely got in the players' heads, and the game went to hell. You do get that sort of stuff does happen. That's Namibia or Oman's best chance from here.
Yeah, I really enjoy watching Namibia play cricket, so I'm hoping that they have one more surprise left for us. Anyway, that's 2 groups done. You guys are watching Overthrows with Behram and Jared. We'll be back after the short break with 2 more groups, so keep watching. This is your cue, Jared. Play the ad.
This is brought to you by Cricket 8. They are a new player in the game trying to educate fans on what is really happening in cricket. We have a partnership with them where we host live watch-alongs, do podcasts, and write articles. If you want to know what is really happening with our game, visit cricket8.com. If you make any content, Minvo Pro is the tool for you. Take your long format content and cut it and slice it for social media. This AI-inspired weapon will turn your one piece of work into so many clips. Try Minvo.pro now.
Welcome back to Overthrows. You guys are with Behram and Jared, and we are on to Group C in the T20 World Cup. Let's start with Afghanistan. They gave New Zealand a proper pounding in the Black Caps' opening fixture in the T20 World Cup. Rehmanullah Gurbaz started with the bat, scoring a quick-fire 80, which was actually, his second consecutive 50. He got 76 versus Uganda as well. Has looked like $1 million in this T20 World Cup thus far. And then Rashid Khan and Fazil Haq Farooqi took figures of 4 for 17 each. Jared, Fazil Haq Farooqi actually has 9 wickets and 44 deliveries in this T20 World Cup. He took 5 for 9 versus Uganda as well. And he is, of course, the leading wicket taker. How insane is that? 9 wickets and 44 deliveries.
Yeah, it's I'm trying to think of another run that someone's been on like that before. I can't. Maybe Malinga.
Raj in the ODI World Cup.
Who did you have?
Oh, sorry, Shami in the ODI World Cup.
Yeah, I suppose that was a good one, wasn't it? It's a very unlikely thing to have happened, but yes, no doubt he's on one. Their tournament has kind of been a dream so far, and they've got Papua New Guinea and the West Indies to come, right? Like they did it. They had to beat New Zealand. I thought New Zealand had no chance in that game, being that They were going to Guyana to play a team that had already played in Guyana, and then they started complaining about not practicing at night. And I was just like, this team's not going to win this game. The Papua New Guinea game, they were certainly well on top there. So they're flying at the moment. They probably need more batters to stand up rather than just one or two. Certainly their openers are carrying a big part of it at the moment. But
That is true.
I like what they've been doing so far. And I mean, I'm not sure that they haven't played the best cricket in that group.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at Gurbaz, he's had 2 really good games, but Ibrahim Zadran also scored 70 versus Uganda. Sure, it was Uganda, but that's a solid opening pair. And
So
we're yet
both,
to
I mean,
see
both
how,
those guys have made a lot of runs, haven't they?
we're yet to see how the others fare because they didn't do too well versus Uganda, right? Once the opening pair fell. But when you look at that spin attack, right? You've got your Rashid Khans, and Rashid bowled like peak Rashid Khan versus New Zealand, right? He was on a hat trick at 1.4 for 17. And I mean, you've got Noor Ahmed, Mohammad Nabi is still around. I think Mujib is not even playing. I feel like Fazalak Farooqi getting the ball, or new ball in particular, to talk the way he is really gives them an edge. I would say they are definite dark horses, Afghanistan.
Yeah, I don't know if I would go that far because I kind of think against the best teams they're going to lose early wickets. Not because they're a bad team, just because it's much more likely. And I think that will change things quite dramatically for them. But it's very hard to see how they don't qualify for the next round, right? And so that's step one, right?
Absolutely.
And once they're in that next round, then let's see how they develop from there. But I'm not completely sold on them. But as far as this group is, as I said, I'm unless the West Indies absolutely smash their faces in, I'm not sure. I don't believe that they're the best team. And West Indies haven't played anyone yet, and have still struggled in one of their games. They're about to play the two teams. They're basically West Indies have potentially 2 knockout games coming up against them. If they lose to New Zealand, Afghanistan's a knockout game, right? So it's really, really tough for them from where they are. But New Zealand is I think isn't it New Zealand and Nepal have basically not started this tournament yet. So
they've only played 1 game each.
there are several teams who've played 3, and somehow those teams have only played 1 each. It's so bizarre.
I mean, coming back to Afghanistan, I think definite Super 8 team. And I also feel like they were born for these particular playing conditions, barring Antigua, maybe everything suits them. And with that fabled spin bowling attack, I feel like they have a solid chance at the semis at least. Coming to New Zealand, yes, only 1 game. They dropped catches. Devon Conway looked like a guy who'd never played cricket hadn't played cricket for 3 months because he was injured, of course. He missed a stumping. He missed a run out, which was inexcusable. They looked very rusty and out of sorts. And that defeat first up with a heavy, net run rate damage over there as well, because they were bowled out for 75, right?
Yeah.
It does not put them in good stead. The only thing that's going for them is that jersey. The tee looks absolutely brilliant. But I feel like New Zealand might be that team that could exit the, T20 World Cup in the first round in that group.
Yeah. They should beat Uganda and Papua New Guinea, right?
Yeah.
So really, it's going to come down to maybe what they need is Afghanistan to beat West Indies, and then it's a straight shot between them and the West Indies.
True. Otherwise, it's a net run rate battle.
What was that? Sorry.
Otherwise, it's a net run rate battle, right?
Yeah, I think I've got that right. So they play them. Oh God, where is it? Is it Trinidad?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's the Brian Lara Stadium. So they play them at the Brian Lara Stadium. They've basically got all their games, all their important games are on ragging turning pitches. So they're not going to have to go up against Rashid Khan next time, but they're going to have to go up against Akil Hassan and Gutkesh Modi, right? True. Roston Chase will bowl some overs as well. If this is their issue, and it certainly looks like it's their issue at the moment, that's not a good matchup for them, right? They'd much rather play in St. Lucia or Antigua or one of the other venues if that was the case. So they've got a lot to do, but they've only played 1 game. So at least they've had to practice now. And also I think the other problem for them is that the next game is the West Indies, right? So their first 2 games are the 2 most important games, and they've already lost one of them. Like, they're already so far behind where they need to be.
Yeah.
it's a little bit awkward, but okay, that's what the schedule does, right? The West Indies almost lost their first game against PNG, right? So,
Yeah,
and Pakistan have had their issues with first games against associates as well. So, maybe
absolutely.
that's not ideal, but it just feels like New Zealand's sitting back watching everyone else win, because both Afghanistan and West Indies haven't lost a game yet.
I mean, the West Indies show that they defeated Papua New Guinea in that tense sort of tournament opener. But then versus Uganda, they were a lot more comfortable, scored 173 and bowled Uganda out for 39. You mentioned Akil Hussain, he took 5 for 11 in that game. And him and Moti, plus those few overs of Roston Chase, they could test New Zealand. But the West Indies themselves haven't particularly been tested either. So it's a
No.
really juicy encounter, that one. And it will probably decide the fate of one of those teams, because I feel like Afghanistan have one foot in the Super 8s.
Yeah, if that wicket spins, and it generally does, it's a spin shootout, right? And at the moment, I think West Indies have the better bowling of spin and maybe play spin slightly better, or have the ability to play spin slightly better. But there are players in that New Zealand side, like Conway and Mitchell, who can play spin really well also. So they can step up. And, Bracewell didn't bowl particularly well against Afghanistan. He's a much better bowler than that generally. Santner is fine, but needs to find some wickets for them. So they're not gone. It's just, it's sticky.
Yeah, very sticky. And that is one group that everyone will have a keen eye on. Just to wrap up, Group C, Uganda got bowled out for 58 versus Afghanistan, then got rolled over for 39 versus the West Indies. But they defeated Papua New Guinea by chasing down 78, lost 7 wickets. Doesn't matter. They
Weren't
recorded their maiden
weren't
T20
they like
World Cup
27
win.
for 5 in that one as well?
Something like that. Yeah,
Like,
the
they're
guy.
on the way to being bowled out for 50
Yeah.
there as well. It was absolutely ridiculous.
It's a funny story. The guy who scored the runs, Riyazat something. Riyazat was born in Gilgit-Baltistan, which is disputed territory between India and Pakistan. So people kept having Wikipedia page wars where someone crossed out India, then wrote Pakistan, then someone crossed out Pakistan and wrote India. I mean, the guy plays for Uganda, right? Let that be the only reality. But one guy that I really want to talk about is Frank Nsubuga. I hope I've gotten the pronunciation right.
I call him Frank.
43-year-old.
He feels like a Frank. To be fair, Chad Soper from Papua New Guinea also feels like a Chad. Sometimes if if your first name's that strong, you don't need a second name.
Yeah, maybe he could also pass as a Franco. But anyway, Frank Nsubuga, 43 years of age, is the oldest, or second oldest, cricketer to feature in the T20 World Cup in history. And he recorded the most economical spell in the history of the competition. 2 wickets for 4 runs. What a story. And I mean, them getting to this T20 World Cup was a story on its own. Now they have a victory. That's fantastic for Uganda as a cricketing nation.
Yeah, I think they're the weakest side. So for them to get a victory is huge. It's a real shame for Papua New Guinea, who obviously almost stole the first game and then didn't do very well. And Papua New Guinea remind me a little bit of Scotland, where like we all know that they kind of are better than they are if you've watched enough associate cricket, but when they get to the main stage, it hasn't really worked for them. Whereas, sometimes we overrate the teams who do well at the main stage, who don't do all that well outside of the main stage. So, look, it's great for them and great for African cricket in general. We know that other, Kenya and Rwanda and, you've now got Namibia and Zimbabwe and South Africa. Like that's now an African cricket culture, right? That's not just one or two places. That's a proper African cricket culture. And we just hope it continues to grow from there. Women's cricket as well is another thing that is obviously doing quite well in some parts of Africa. And, Uganda is the glorious crane flying through the sky at the moment for them. And look, there's a cricket has to grow, and it has to grow everywhere. And having a country like Uganda come and be joyous to watch, even when they're terrible, and then steal a game like they did against Papua New Guinea. Like, how can you not love cricket? Like at that point, like if you don't enjoy Uganda winning a World Cup game from where they were, maybe cricket's not for you.
Yeah, everyone loves a feel-good story. They definitely have one. It's a shame they couldn't get the jerseys they wanted, but at least they got a victory, right? And nice little reference with the crane over there. Coming to Group D. And now that leads us to the third major team that is on the brink of a first-round exit. Sri Lanka after losing to South Africa in their tournament opener, they also lost the all-important Nagin Derby versus Bangladesh in what ended up as a low-scoring thriller. Mahmudullah held his nerve in the end, ice in that man's veins, and probably some ice in his beard as well. When did Mahmudullah age so much? That's a conversation for another day.
He does
right?
feel like he's been playing these innings for Bangladesh for a very long time, if we're being honest.
Yeah. But it's crazy how, the Lankan Lions are now looking for a favor from the Netherlands. But they aren't doing great on net run rate either. So even if they do get that favor, it doesn't look, rosy for them at all. And
their net run rate isn't that bad because it's only minus 0.777. So if you compare that to England, for instance, they're not in that situation. I think the problem for Sri Lanka is that they have stumbled into exactly the World Cup that they needed. It's low scoring, it's bowler friendly, and it's going to spin like crazy. And they currently have 0 wins from 2 games, right? Like they, and both of those games, they could have won.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
The South Africa one, they put a lot of. No one should have been defending that, and they would have had to be perfect with the ball to do it, right? But they certainly put pressure on South Africa, and they should have beat Bangladesh, right? Forget the batting collapse at the end, because I know that was a part of it, but they should have just beaten them with the ball, and as and they very nearly did. So they have been there and thereabouts, and they've also played the 2 best teams in their group. Although Netherlands might slightly disagree with that at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, they must be really happy that South Africa beat Bangladesh because now they can kind of hope for the Netherlands to defeat Bangladesh, and then it can go down to net run rate. All they'll need is a handsome victory in both of those, or handsome victories in both of their games. It's funny though. It's a bowling attack that all of us had good areas. The entire team rated quite highly, right? And the batters just haven't given them enough runs to defend. Even versus Bangladesh. Tushara took 4 for 18. If they had 135, they were winning that game.
It might still be the best bowling attack in the competition, right? And if they lose to Netherlands, they might win 1 game. And the way Netherlands are playing really good cricket at the moment, there's no reason the Netherlands can't beat them. So it's absolutely fascinating. If, as you said, if they gave themselves 15 more runs against South Africa and 8 more runs against Bangladesh, they might be 2-0 at the moment, and we might be going, what a team this is. Their batters need to step up a little bit, but their bowlers can defend anything. Look, they can't bat, right? They can't bat. And so I've been saying this for a very long time, and for a very long time, there was a lot of pushback. I think now I'm fiercely in the majority that Sri Lanka can't bat. And occasionally on flat pitches, they can hit. And occasionally they can stick in. But when it comes to modern white ball batting, they're just not very good at it, right? It's not their strength. And, and they're in this position because of that.
Yeah, I mean, there were some really crucial moments in that Bangladesh game that helped the Tigers win it. Of course, Tauhid Hridoy's 3 consecutive sixes versus Hasaranga. Very, very important.
That was huge.
Rashad Hussain took 3 for 22 on T20 World Cup debut. And then that spell of 3 for 18 by the Fizz, in which he got rid of Nisanka, who was in red-hot form. I feel like those 3 guys were ultimately the heroes for Bangladesh. And Sri Lanka, sure, Tushara took 4 for 18. But, with the bat, and we were watching this together, if you remember, in the wee hours of the morning.
I have no idea who I watched these games with when they're overnight, but okay.
Yeah. But if you remember, there were so many times during those death overs where we were wondering, why are they not throwing the kitchen sink at it? What are you doing, Angelo, with your sexy whips for one? And that cost them.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, to be fair to him, although we're probably right that he was playing silly, but he also didn't hold the strike at times when he should have held the strike. Just simple things that he could have done. But realistically, they had a blitzing start and just needed to bat sensibly from then on in. And they didn't. And Hasaranga's faced, 3 balls in this tournament? And he tried to hit, I think he tried to hit almost every one of them for 6, and it's been out twice. So they're coming in with a lot of intent, which I like, and I can't praise the other teams for having intent and then slag off Sri Lanka, but they're just not matching it with batting talent that has the ability to regularly hit the ball.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And I mean, it's all not over for them or any of the other teams either right now. So it's an interesting time to record this show. But moving over to Bangladesh, they could have been 2 for 2, Jared. They nearly chased down 114 versus South Africa in New York. And their supporters will definitely tell you that the umpire is to blame over here, right? He gave Tawhid Ridha out on a delivery, which was not out. Like, you put 10 elite panel umpires over there, and maybe one of them gives it out, and that was the one who did give it out. Maybe Chris Gaffney. I cannot remember, but that was, clearly missing leg. And the 4 leg buys that they would have gotten, they didn't get them because of the rule of how it was a decision. Yeah, dead ball decision overturned. They ultimately lost by 5 runs in the end. So it was a major, turning point in that game. But ultimately, I feel Mahmudullah should have struck that penultimate delivery, that full toss by Maharaj for 6, right? So there you have it. Bangladesh should have won it there and then. They didn't. Maharaj bowled 2 complete pies, proper full tosses, which both deserve to be smashed out of the park. They failed to do that. And fine margins, right?
That had an over against Maharaj earlier where they hit 1-6 from him and they got 7 off the over. So there was 2 overs where they really should have punished Maharaj and they didn't. And he wasn't bowling particularly well he hasn't bowled well on that surface. They're 2 or 3 times they've now played on it. So let's just split this up. I'm doing a video on the main channel about the DRS thing and the loophole within the game. But at the end of the day, Bangladesh had a decision go against them in a cricket game, and that happens all the time. That's what it was. Yeah. Not saying that we shouldn't fix this, because I do think, realistically, DRS doesn't match perfectly with the laws of cricket, so we just need to make a slight tweak to the way that we look at LBWs in DRS games. I've got no issue with that at all, and it's gone against Bangladesh this time. I'm sure other times it's gone in favour of many other teams before, and this is a close game. But Bangladesh just weren't quite good enough with the bat on what was a tricky wicket. And let's be honest, South Africa defended 114 without particularly bowling well.
True.
Maharaj didn't bowl well. Bartman didn't bowl very well. Rabada didn't bowl very well. Nokia was outstanding and unplayable. He looked like Jasprit Bumrah on this wicket. If I was him, I would move to New York. I would move to New York and this would be my new pitch. And Marco Jansen was really, really good, especially in the first 3 overs. So 3 of their bowlers didn't really step up, and they still almost defended 114. So Bangladesh had plenty of chances. I mean, Rabada was just bowling wide full tosses. Wide half volleys. I'm like, have you watched any of this game? Or any of this? This is your 3rd time on this pitch. Just bang the ball into the pitch. Bang the ball into the pitch. Bang the ball into the pitch. How tricky is this? Right? Harris Ralph just suddenly went, I'm just going to hit the pitch a lot of times. Oh, look what happens. No one can hit me suddenly. Right? Like silly things like that. And so Bangladesh, on the DRS thing, we've said it's an umpiring decision that goes against you. Those things happen all the time in cricket. You have to take that. They went up against South Africa on a day when South Africa didn't play that very well. Bangladesh bowled really, really well for the majority of that time. Bangladesh made an error with their selections by picking an extra spinner that they definitely did not need, right? Yep. So, and they still got the total within a chaseable amount, and they just didn't get there, and part of that was just that unranked Nokia's overs were so devastating, and Marco Janssen's first spell was so devastating that they were always in a tricky position when it came to run rate. And if you go back to it, it's very similar to what we saw with Pakistan as well, where there are times where you're like, oh, Bangladesh is well on top. And then you decide, but they still need more than a run a ball. And no one has managed on this pitch to ever score comfortably at more than a run a ball. So good luck.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also like how South Africa's bowling attack is shaping up. Sure, they've played only in New York, but now Nokia's got some confidence. Bartman took 4 for 11 versus the Netherlands, and Rabada's had some really poor games. All of those guys, if they come and play well in tandem, that'll serve them well. But then again, Shamsi will come in, right? When they go to the Caribbean.
They'll change their lineup a little bit when they go.
Definitely.
I mean, I don't know how much we know about South Africa other than the fact that David Miller's in just absolutely sublime form. And I actually think Henrik Claessen's in pretty good form too. But speaking are they in form on a terrible wicket, or are they just in form?
Speaking of which, Liton Das dropped David Miller's catch today. So that was another turning point, right? Like, had he held on, Bangladesh could have potentially won.
Well, to go back, that's the thing about the whole, if this happens, if that happens. Like the Mahmudullah drop by Marco Jansen at slip, South Africa would have won that game by 40 runs. Right
True.
at that point, if he'd taken that, and so that was a huge moment in the game. So these things happen, and sometimes umpires get things wrong, and sometimes fielders make mistakes. Not to mention, I reckon Bangladesh scored about a third of their runs in overthrows today.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, if you look at all things in today's game, it kind of evens out, right? But anyway, speaking of David Miller, he was actually the hero for South Africa versus the Netherlands. His unbeaten 59 rescued his team from a torrid start. They were 4 down for 12 in the power play, and they nearly couldn't chase 104, but then Miller ensured that they did. It could have very well ended in a repeat upset that we saw in the 2022 T20 World Cup. But 2 wins in 2 games, and that upset avoided, and also a crucial win, or 3 games in 3, sorry, a crucial win versus Bangladesh as well. Pretty good start, but all in New York.
Yeah, so who the hell knows? But yes, you're right.
Yeah.
I think Miller's just been incredible, as I just said. There's the lofted cover drive. I think he might have played a one again today, or the lofted off drive it might have been today, where you just look at him, you just go, like Rishabh Pant has made runs and quicker, but looked like going out every third ball. Miller doesn't really look like going out on this wicket. It's brilliant the way he's gone about it so far. But how good are South Africa? I have no idea, because they just walked over against Netherlands. They just snatched the game against Bangladesh, and they weren't exactly brutal in the chase against Sri Lanka. But at the same time, India is the only side that's won a game comfortably on this pitch so far. Am I right in saying that?
Versus Ireland. That's
true.
So
there's been one comfortable victory on this ground. So if I'm Sri Lanka, if I'm South Africa, I'm taking the 3 and I'm pissing off to the West Indies and never coming back again.
Yeah. Oh well, if you're Anrik Nokia, you're moving there, right? So that's the.
If I'm Anrik Nokia, I am never leaving.
Yeah. Anyway, the Dutch are also still in contention in Group D. They beat Nepal in their tournament opener, and so left armour Tim Pringle, son of Chris Pringle from New Zealand. He was the player of the match, took a 3-fer. Logan Van Beek also took a 3-fer and is bowling extremely well these days. That delivery, who was it against versus South Africa? Who did he clean up? Reza Hendricks. What a ball, right? So both of those guys took 3-fers versus Nepal. Max O'Dowd hit an unbeaten anchoring half century. You said he's the best associate batter to be in that particular situation, to kind of chase down a sub-100 total. And I mean, Nepal also dropped 2 catches, including one of Max O'Dowd. So it's not like the game was entirely one-sided. They could have lost that one, Netherlands, but they got the important 2 points. And hey, they could very well defeat Bangladesh on their day. It's not something, even Sri Lanka, they are that team. I think they are.
Where do they play Sri Lanka? Do you know where that one is?
I'm not sure.
Because I think that will probably play a big part in that particular game. So that one is at St. Lucia.
Ooh.
Yeah, that helps Netherlands a little bit. Not that I want to face Patharana at St. Lucia, but Netherlands look like they have a more solid batting lineup at the moment. At the very least, they look like they can, it looks like a more consistent batting lineup. Maybe doesn't have quite the highs of that Sri Lanka could possibly get to, although we're going to have to see that. But that's a completely different tournament, right?
Yeah.
Like, to go from New York to St. Lucia, like, I can't think of 2 more different kinds of environments that you're going to be in, and that's why World Cups are so great. Look, Netherlands did a great thing against South Africa. And at the very least, they have got a very good net run rate. I mean, it's par, but I mean, like, very good. I mean, they're playing Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. If they can win one of those games, especially if they win the one against Bangladesh, they're a huge chance, aren't they, at that stage of getting through? And then it's, it might be about net run rate. There's a few different things, because South Africa's so far ahead, that group is kind of wide open for the second spot. But if I'm Netherlands, I'm pretty happy at having to play Sri Lanka in where did I say it was? St. Lucia. And the other one is in, oh my God, why have I forgotten where the other game is? The other one's in the West Indies as well. And I now cannot remember. So the other one's Bangladesh. Oh God, is it the Kingston ground?
Is it? I haven't really looked at all of the venues for the fixtures.
No, I'm just trying to remember everything off the top of my head. I think it is. I think it's in St. Vincent at Kingston. So again, they've got a hugely different tournament against 2 different teams. I think the St. Lucia one helps them in that it doesn't generally spin a lot in St. Lucia. St. Vincent, I'd have to go back through my numbers and have a look, but I think the spinners will play a part there. But I think if I'm Netherlands, I think my batting's Bangladesh level, maybe if not slightly better. And Tim Pringle's bowling absolutely beautifully. Van Meekeren's bowled really good, as you said. Logan Van Beek's bowled some great balls. Vivian Kimmer. It fits really well together, kind of until they get to the death and they have to use Baz the leader. Yeah. Up until that point, it fits really well together. But Baz the leader is a natural wicket taker. They could take wickets. They have a couple of anchors in their batting. They maybe don't have as many guys who can just come in and whack it and change your game quickly. But you can maybe, outside of Ridoy, I'm not sure that Bangladesh has that either. So it could be a really fascinating game. And that might be the game for the next round.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the one game to look forward to most in this group now, and it might well go down to net run rate. Also love how Netherlands are the only team who use one of their opening bowlers to bowl 4 overs on the bounce. Vivian Kingma has been doing that for a couple of games. Final talking point for overthrows. How about that Nepalese crowd in Dallas?
It was great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They are a sleeping giant. I think most people who know associate cricket know just how much passion there is in cricket over there. They've had their problems with administration. They've obviously had a problem with their star player in multiple ways, really. Paris Khadkar left early as well because of some of the issues within Nepalese cricket. They've had their issues, but I don't know what their ceiling is in cricket. But I don't know if there's been a country that has embraced cricket on the level that Nepal has since Bangladesh came in, right? And that's no disrespect to Ireland and Afghanistan and a lot of the other associates, but there is a passion and a level of love for cricket in Nepal that is just absolutely infectious. And, their crowd lived every moment of that game and almost got them over the line in Dallas, right?
Like, had they caught that catch, Max O'Dowd's catch, it was game on. Yeah. And if you've ever seen the crowds in Kathmandu, right, they are insane. So I wasn't surprised to see that crowd in Dallas either.
I was surprised just because I didn't know there were that many Nepalese people in America.
Of course they were. There are brown people everywhere, right?
Yeah, but you say that, but it's not the Nepalese restaurants and stuff you see a lot in other parts of the Western world. But I've never really heard of, Nepalese culture in America in that way, right? And it's Dallas. So again, I didn't know. It's a bit like when Zimbabwe had that incredible support in Australia. I was like, even I didn't know that many Zimbabweans lived in Australia.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyway, that wraps up overthrows and our T20 World Cup roundup. We do have to take some super chats though, so head right over there, Jared. I think there are 7, which actually is not that bad a number. ABCDF comes up first. He says comparisons between Virat and Babar once seemed very reasonable. After Babar's innings versus New Zealand in 2019 World Cup, he looks set to become the top batter of his generation. Why hasn't he reached those levels? I was there in 2019 at Edgbaston for that knock. I feel like if you go a year and a half, behind, we're still having that conversation. But, this has been a really, really shit period for Babar Azam and Pakistan cricket. They've won 9 games of cricket since that reserve day from hell in that Asia Cup in 2023. I don't know what the technical reasons might be. But yeah, sure, he might be matching Kohli on numbers till a certain point, but he's going to have to do a whole lot more to ever reach that level.
Yeah, he's not going to reach that level now, is he? Because how old is he?
He's 30.
Yeah, he's already into his peak and he's already had a dip. That doesn't mean that he won't reach, he won't go nuts again in the next 2 or 3 years. And if he's a Pakistani player, he might be at his best when he's 44. But he's probably not going to reach that Virat Kohli level. If you go back through his career, though, he has had a lot of highs and lows. He had one of the worst starts to Test cricket that any...
Yes.
I don't know if there's ever been a player of his talent at his age that came into Test cricket that was as poor as he was. It's always been a bit up and down with him. Technically, I don't see any massive problems. I do think the mental part of cricket, he's not a big part of my book, but, the more I talk to players, the more you realize that a lot of these things it's just that the way you handle pressure, the way you problem solve in games, and the way you evolve as cricket moves are the 3 most important things. And I wonder if Babar just hasn't been able to do that at times. And when he gets it right, there's not much you can do to him, right?
Yeah.
And when he doesn't get it right, nothing seems to work.
And I mean, Virat Kohli is a mentality monster. We know that.
Yeah.
Babar, not so much. So there you have your difference. Anmol Srivats asks, why did both teams not just bowl length only? By my count, there were like 3 to 4 bounces after the power play off length balls across both innings. Yet they both kept offering full balls, which sometimes got whacked. Who are you talking about?
I love that because it could be any. I know he's talking about the New York pitch.
Yes, that I also understand.
But I don't know exactly. So Marco Janssen, and he's probably talking about India, Pakistan. I don't know, but it could be either of the games. But Marco Janssen came on for his last over, and he bowled a bunch of back of a length stuff and could not be hit. And then suddenly he just bowls a half volley. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you think's going to happen here? Right? He's obviously going for the Yorker, but no one's trying to whack the Yorker out the ground anyway. So best chance is they jam the Yorker out and they get a single on the leg side, right? Just keep bowling back of a length. Just keep bowling what works. And we talked about it with Rabada as well. Arshdeep is another one. We're like, I get it. You're a swing bowler. It's not your natural length. Just go with me on this one, though. Just go with me that it works here. Because if it can work for Jeremy Gordon of Canada, I just think it can work for Arshdeep Singh of India, right? So you're right. Whip is another one, Anmol. Like, most of the runs have been from wide balls or from full balls, right? And occasionally slipping down leg. I don't have. If you're trying to bowl sort of at middle and off back of a length, sometimes the batter's going to get their body inside it. But your general point is true, and you know if you'd been in any one of the many different chats I've been in, you'll know how angry I have been at some of the balls that I have seen. I was apoplectic about Rabada's bowling today. I was so angry with the way he was bowling. And he got a wicket with one of those balls as well. It was terrible. He is way too good to be bowling like that.
Yeah, I mean, on the New York surface, you've got to be targeting the stumps and either good length or back of a length. Bounces, no good. Width, no good. Fuller length deliveries also. If you can get to the pitch of the ball, you can nullify the surface as much as you can, right? Anyway, Indie Guy with the next super chat says, many fans seem to agree the best T20 batter is Klaasen or Sky. I can see the numbers and understand why. Ooh, you rhymed. But NBA fans, despite impressive numbers, accepted Jokic as the best in the world only after multiple playoff performance and a ring to go with it. And I think there's more to this. And I also think he's taking a dig at you.
No, he's not. He's saying that Jokic
with the Jokic thing.
That's all he needs to be saying. I don't even think we need the and. Wait, here it is.
And also holds the lack of a ring against Luka. Both these batters' career highlights as of now remains performance in not so crucial league stage matches in IPL and T20 World Cup. Are cricket fans too lenient? I think it's fair to say that Sky and Klaasen haven't scored in big games.
Wasn't Sky fantastic in the last T20 World Cup? Hasn't Sky won titles with Mumbai?
Well, I guess it's a different ball game with or in an Indian jersey versus in the IPL.
But I just said wasn't he fantastic in that last World Cup at times?
Yeah.
He played two brilliant innings that I can think of in that time. So, and he's won IPL titles. So the whole thing of comparing him to Joker or Luka doesn't make any sense. Well, Luka might not win a championship, but those sorts of players doesn't make any sense anyway, because that's not how international cricket works, right? So Andy Flower, no, you can't tell me that Andy Flower wasn't a great batter because Zimbabwe didn't win more games when Andy Flower was there, right? You can't tell me that Fazal Mahmood wasn't a great bowler because Pakistan didn't win more test matches, or Murli or Hadley didn't win more test matches for their team, right? So straight away, when you're saying we're being too lenient, maybe what you're really saying is that NBA fans are too ring obsessed.
Yeah, right? Perhaps.
It's a team sport. You can only do so much, right? Garfield Sobers was maybe, well, certainly in the top 3 greatest players of all time, right? West Indies weren't a dominant side when Garfield Sobers was there, right? It's a team sport and there are 10 other people. Basketball's slightly different because there is only 4 other people on the court with you at any one time. And it's a lot more, the amount of possessions Luka on offense touches the ball about 180 times a game, right? And Dallas only seem to touch it 120 times a game. So I don't even know how that works mathematically. So it is a little bit different with basketball. Heinrich Klaasen has been the best batter in the world over the last little while. I don't think that necessarily means that his teams are always guaranteed to win, though. we're talking about two different things. And I think once you start doing stuff like that, you just go down the hole of American fans. And Joker was a great player before the Nuggets won a title. To think that him winning the title had to guarantee that doesn't mean anything, because I watched Karl Malone play for absolutely generations. And I'm sure there are great footballers who never won a lot of titles that are still great footballers. And that's not what, sometimes you're just in the wrong place. One of the best basketballers I've ever seen is Kevin Garnett.
Yeah.
And he was at a fucking horrendous franchise, and they didn't win because of the franchise. And the minute he went to a half decent franchise, they won, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just that simple. So I think we have to be a bit smarter with the way that we look at players. And we're looking at their individual batting anyway. But in Sky's case, I actually think he does have titles, so I'm not really sure how that holds true for him anyway.
Also, like, if you go to basketball, anyone who played in the Jordan era and didn't win, like, it's not their fault, right? That's 8 years in which there's Jordan and Hakeem Olajuwon, and that's it. Like, the Patrick Ewings and the Charles Barkleys, they didn't win.
And so if Jordan plays all that time and Hakeem Olajuwon never wins a championship, are we then saying Hakeem Olajuwon's not great? Like, I mean, that's what I mean. Team is a situation. And, you know, you look at a couple of years ago, this is a basketball analogy, but a couple of years ago, Philadelphia 76ers had Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and they were both on a trajectory based on their stats of all-NBA glory. And then it fell down spectacularly. They kept making horrible decisions with the personnel around them. Joel Embiid kept getting injured. All these things kept happening. Boston had two stars that were maybe not quite at the level combined of those two other players, but Boston kept putting better players around them. And now Boston are 2-0 up against Dallas. Like, does that make Jason Tatum a better player than Joel Embiid? No, right? That's not how sport is played. And we have to be honest about that. And international cricket, even less so, right? Heinrich Klaasen has only just got good over the last couple of years. And within that time, they haven't played a World Cup. They'd already lost the previous World Cup before he sort of got to his peak.
Also, one of those Philadelphia fuck-ups was thanks to Kawhi Leonard of the Toronto Raptors. And
the lucky bounce, right?
Yeah,
like, do you know what I mean? Like,
so there was that.
Stuff like that.
Also,
bad management and all sorts of things. Like, all of these things play a part. And it's like, Joel Embiid can only do so much with his dodgy knees and his massive frame, right? Yeah. Like, we've got to be realistic with these things sometimes.
Yeah. Think of it like this indie guy. You think of the two best T20 batters in contemporary cricket, and you'd probably come up with Sky and Klaasen, right?
Those and who would you have had
probably
before?
Think of
Gale and de Villiers?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Are we actually saying that they weren't great T20 players because their teams didn't win? I mean,
de Villiers is a prime example.
Are we blaming de Villiers for Corey Anderson being a death bowler here? Like, well, I mean, at a certain point, you have to put a good side around these people.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, next super chat. Anmol Srivats asks, how do you think the pitches in the West Indies, we've not seen yet, including North Sound, are likely to play? Also, how come it seems easier to bat in Barbados during the day rather than at night, though it's dewy?
Yeah, I don't know about the Barbados one. I haven't noticed that as much, Anmol. You might be right, but I just haven't noticed that as much. North Sound is a batting pitch. I saw the odds when Oman made 155 the other day, and like they were still a good chance looking at the odds of winning that. And I was like, if that's the Antigua wicket I know against Scotland, unless Bilal Khan takes like 7 wickets, I don't think they're going to be winning that one. St. Lucia, generally a batting wicket. St. Vincent, I should know, and I've probably got notes on somewhere, but I can't think of off the top of my head. And Trinidad obviously spins.
Yes.
More or less for I should say it's helpful for spin in both places. So yeah, that's where we're going, in Guyana is Guyana.
Yes. All right. Next super chat. Aditya Bilal says, Behram, how did you get Jared to learn Kudrat Ka Nizam? I don't think it was me. I think he learned it on his own.
Do you know what? It was Kritika Naidu who actually taught me how to pronounce it, which I should have just asked Behram. But it's one of those things that, like, I know it's been going on for a while. And, you know, I've probably written about it a few times. But yeah, once Sucklane said it, I think I got tagged. I had a tweet thread that went viral during the last World Cup when I talked about that ridiculous bouncer that almost got Pakistan into the World Cup.
The Haris Rauf bouncer to Basta leader.
Yeah.
So I remember that.
That must have been in my tweets in that World Cup about 5,000 times. Like, I don't know how many times that Twitter thread went, and every time anything crazy happened to Pakistan in that World Cup, people would say, Jared, it's Kudrat Ka Nizam. Did I get that right?
Yeah. Yes. Pronounce it with a K. It's easy. Kudrat.
Yeah. I've
But the
got
rest
it
you
written
nailed.
down on my board now with a K.
Yes, that's smart. Because the Q confuses people. People call me Behram Quasi. So there's that. Aditya Bilal, once again, is it wise to slog first, anchor later in New York? Well, I mean, power play, fielders in the inner circle, ball is hard. Yes.
It's a weird one, isn't it? Because we've had a bunch of teams also collapse early.
True.
So South Africa collapsed twice early there. Sri Lanka collapsed early-ish there. Even India lost a couple of early wickets. So yes and no is my answer. And
Don't play the ball square. That's what I'll say.
It's hard to play it straight when they're bowling back of a length to you, though, isn't it, as well? I think the best shot is sort of getting inside the line and just turning it to square leg over and over again, but you only can make 80 runs doing that. So, look, Aditya, one thing I would say is that wicket plays very differently on slightly different days. And some days it seems to nip around a little bit. On those days, I just don't think you can slog first. On the days where it's coming on, I mean, it's never coming on well on that wicket, but on the days when it's not swinging or seaming sideways, you're probably better off to attack early on and put yourself in a good position, and even be prepared to lose a couple of wickets. Because one thing I think you can do is once you get two batters set, you know, be it David Miller, Mahmudullah, you know, there's been a few players that I've seen do this. Rizwan was another one, of course. That ability to just turn the ball for singles is actually the one thing that you can do if you're set. Unfortunately, if you're not set, you end up like Shivam Dube or Ravi Jadeja, where you can't even freaking defend sometimes. So it's such a weird wicket.
It is really, really weird. And we're going to make a footmarks on it, so you guys stay tuned for that. Adastida, I hope I got your pronunciation right, says, just to thank you for all the amazing content you put out as a group. Question, Scotland's form looks quite good. Is there a good chance they run deep? Well, thank you. And yes, we actually spoke about it. Any final comments on that, Jared?
Yeah, I mean, run deep is the interesting part of this, because I think he's assuming they're going to make it to the second round. I still think that's about a 55% chance. I don't think they run deep further into the tournament, but I think they can upset a couple of teams in the next stage if they do get through. But I don't think they run deep. I don't think they're a legitimate semi-final chance if they do get through to the next round.
Yeah, of course, like the semifinals would be a stretch. Thinesh Selvaratnam says, great content, keep it up. Thank you, Thinesh. And that's not the first time you've said that either. We really appreciate it. And the generous donation as well. Just one question. Where do you both rate Chaminda Vaas in the all-time fast bowlers list? If we're talking about ODI, new ball, left arm, seamers, high.
Yeah, I think he's probably underrated, partly because his record doesn't look as good and he wasn't particularly fast, right? Like he wasn't...
Yeah.
You know, his best ball was very, very sexy, but he averages in ODI cricket around, 27, 29 in Test cricket. T20 cricket was probably what would have been his best format, and we didn't see him play all that much, and they didn't win all that much when he was around. He certainly wasn't in his peak, right? Like, my God, he must have started his career about 20 years before T20 cricket. So, no, I would rate him very high as an overall talent, as an all-format bowler. Would have loved to have seen what he would have become, you know, in that sort of wobble ball era and T20 era, just because I think he was maybe slightly ahead of his time. But to be a bowler who can bowl at about 130 kilometers an hour and have that good of a record for so long, especially in Asia, I think just tells you the control and the intelligence that he had. So, yeah, I certainly rate him quite high.
Yeah, he could make that new ball talk. No mug with the bat either. I loved myself some Chaminda Vaas. Anyway, Sankalp Verma says, barring the danger to players and promoting the game in US, New York pitch has now played better in the last two matches. Isn't this kind of pitch a good change from belters every now and then? Shouldn't this be encouraged? Well, I mean, I'm fine with bowling-friendly surfaces. I'm not fine with the unsafe bounce on this track. That's pretty much it.
Did it play better in these last two matches, or were there more boundaries because they cut the grass shorter? I don't think it played any better at all in these last couple of games. I mean, one team couldn't chase 115, and another team couldn't chase 119. You know, against Netherlands, South Africa could have been bowled out for like 50. You know, let's be honest here. I don't think it has been all that much better. It's about the safety, right? Yeah. If you're trying to give me a reason why this is a good pitch, it's not. If you want to say that the cricket's been entertaining because of the fact it's been bowler friendly and all these games have been so close, I'm all for that, right? I've got no issue with that. But it's not a good surface. It shouldn't be encouraged. We shouldn't ever see a surface this bad again at another World Cup. And the ICC should be ashamed that the top players in the world are having to play on this surface. The fact that it's been entertaining is fine. This isn't a bowlers versus batters thing because everyone knows I'm pro bowling wickets, right? This is how many people got hit in the friggin' gloves in the India-Pakistan game because the pitch wasn't any good. If you can't defend the ball, right, without getting caught at short cover, what are we talking about? That's not even a normal wicket at this point.
Yeah. Also, save your breath, Jared, because we're doing a foot marks on this. Yes. And the pitch that you want, Sankalp, is probably Guyana, right? That's the low-scoring pitch that you can dream of or something.
Yeah, exactly. Guyana's been... it's funny how many people have defended the New York pitch, and no one said to me, oh, that Guyana pitch is really good. Well, Guyana's... It does exactly the same thing, except for the fact that it's not unsafe.
Yeah, absolutely. Sankalp Verma again says Lamechane will play this World Cup. Forget the big three. The ICC can't even enforce ethical standards in its own event in the West Indies regarding a player of an associate nation. Is this a missed opportunity for the ICC? Is he playing? Because last I checked, he wasn't.
I didn't think he was playing either. This is complete news to me if this has happened.
Yeah.
When you say ethical standards, though, he's been found not guilty. Am I right in saying that, Bayram?
By a high court in Kathmandu. But yeah, I mean, there's the whole Mackay and Tini thing over there. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's very similar to Mackay and Tini. Both of them were found guilty and then were found not guilty on appeal or high courts or however these things work. So what ethical standards would the ICC have? Like, they would have to have done an investigation into this themselves. I'm assuming they thought the Nepalese police system was going to be better suited to do that. So I can't imagine that I can't imagine how the ICC would be able to say that he couldn't play in this tournament. So I don't know about ethical standards. I don't even see how that plays a part, if we're being honest.
Also, Sankalp, I mean, they can't just change their squad midway unless there's some sort of injury, right? Unless they force an injury. And also, I mean, last I checked, and I've been following this, I don't think he's going to come. He's done.
I'm just going to do a quick news thing in case he's just seen something that we haven't seen. Oh no, he's arrived in. He's right.
Oh, no way.
In the West Indies.
All right then.
Previously denied. Let's have a look. Next in action against. Yeah, so I don't know if that means he's going to play. But as I said, his conviction was overturned. Like he's been found not guilty in a court of law. Like I have no idea if he's guilty or not because I haven't been on the jury and I haven't been part of following any of that side of it. But I don't see how the ICC could say no to a player who's been found not guilty. It's a little bit different if they have like their own evidence or if in domestic violence cases, it can be a little bit tricky. And sometimes leagues will cancel a player's right to play, but that is because they have images of the player doing it, but then the spouse might decline to press charges, but they have proof of it happening. I haven't followed this case well enough to know, but I'm more than happy to stick the boot into the ICC. I just don't see how the ICC would be able to not allow him to play in this situation.
Yeah. So Sanjeev Bhaumik in the comments has told us that he is in the squad. He just didn't get a visa for the US.
Oh, okay.
So,
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I mean, let's see if he features or not. I mean, if he's available, they'll definitely play him. But yeah, you probably need to pick your battles with the courts in Nepal. The ICC couldn't really do anything over there. Abhishek Ravichandran with the final super chat of Overthrows asks one question and one request. Why are associate nations so better at bowling than batting? And then can you guys make a video explaining the numbers behind true values? You know what, Jared? I was actually going to talk to you about this, that we should have a little explainer thing, which dumbs it down for lay people. I think
we have done it before, but it was probably early on when we came up with them. So it's a fair while since then. But yeah, I'm sure we'll do something. We'll probably put an article up on Good Areas as well, so people can link to it and everything. Why is associate nations so much better at bowling than batting? I'm trying to think if that's right. So Scotland obviously aren't. No, I don't think that's right, Abhishek, overall. It's certainly not my understanding of it. So no, I wouldn't have thought so. One thing I would say is that a lot of those associate teams play on wickets that aren't as great. and consistently. And if you play on wickets that aren't as great consistently, so the Dutch players always talk about this. A lot of the wickets in the Netherlands are just not great. And then they get to international level and everything comes on perfectly, and they almost don't know what to do with that jump up. And I think that probably plays a small part sometimes. But certainly Ireland was a batting team for a long time. Scotland has been a batting team. I'm trying to the old Kenya sides were batting sides. So there's been a lot of very good, there's a lot of batting dependent associate teams as well. And then you've got the sort of more the all-round battler sides like Namibia and Papua New Guinea who don't really have any strengths or weaknesses. But yeah, usually what happens with associate cricket is they have maybe one guy who's international world class, maybe three other players who are like first class level, and then a bunch of club cricketers. And so if you do have like one or two players who are world class in a certain skill, they're going to lean you towards one way or the other. Like we were talking about with David Visa before, right? I don't think they are necessarily a bowling team when you look at the stats. But they probably feel more like a bowling team when David Visa is bowling at the death, right? Whereas actually, they're probably about level overall.
Yeah, fair enough. We actually got another super chat, so let's take that quickly. Aditya Bilal once again says, do you think Hindi/Urdu to cricket will soon become like Spanish to football? India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Afghanistan understand it. Think we might already be there, given that a lot of these associate nations have diaspora, players?
Yeah, I talked to someone not that long ago from one of the Indian TV channels. I can't remember which one now, so I won't say. But it was, one of the Sony or Star or whoever. And they said that in India, the Hindi channel, even though Hindi isn't the biggest language, is by far the most listened to cricket coverage. And I have been saying for a while that this is already on the books. So it will be a little bit like Spanish and English, if you know what I mean. In football, and it will be Hindi or Hindi Urdu and English in cricket. That combination. I think that's probably where we're going. I think that makes the most sense. And also, cricket is an English language sport because it's England, and it's no longer an English dominated sport. So it would make sense for another language to come in, and Hindi isn't the biggest language in India, of course, but because of Urdu, and a lot of Pakistan, as you say, a lot of Afghanistanis speak it as well. Suddenly you have a lot of people who understand it, even if they don't all speak it, which is, then we come to the Spanish/Portuguese aspect of
I feel like Bollywood has a big part to play because that's watched in all of these countries, right? That you named, and that kind of takes the language even further.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like if not already there, then soon it will be. Like, if you look at the sheer number of people who play the sport, it's already the major language. But just because, it's a Commonwealth sport or was a Commonwealth sport, which is now expanding thanks to this T20 World Cup as well, now you're going to see, different, countries appear, and maybe you'll see different languages as well. But
I also don't think that the Hindi, I think that aspirationally, a lot of the best commentators and writers traditionally wanted to work in English. In fact, they still do.
Yeah.
Right. And I think now there is maybe a little bit more of, wait a minute, I could cash in Hindi now. And I know that sounds really, but that's kind of, I've heard those conversations before, right?
Yeah.
And so I do think the thinking behind it is very different than it used to be.
Also, I feel like as far as international broadcasts are concerned, we're still a while away till, English is not the dominant language. Because then again, that's the one language that everyone understands, or most countries do. So anyway.
Yeah, I think because English is so strong in so many, because of the Commonwealth, it's always going to play a part in cricket one way or another.
Absolutely. All right, that wraps up this episode of Overthrows. Thank you, everybody, in the comment section and for the super chats. As I've said this, there is another super chat that's come in right away, so I suppose we'll just take that. Rishabh Sharma says, observed politically left-inclined people like low-scoring games and right like high-scoring games. I want to see your data.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got a friend who's very, very left-wing, and he believes that if you score under 300 in a test match, there should be an inquiry. And he's like a left-wing, green-voting vegan. So I've never seen that before. I love the vibes of it. And just while we're here as well, I should say on this podcast that I have my new book is out, Overthrowing Cricket's Empire. Since we were talking about English and Hindi, I should have brought that up then. It's about the history of all the teams who have beaten England for the first time back from the 1800s when Australia did it all the way through to Afghanistan in the last World Cup. So I'm really hoping that Oman and Namibia don't ruin my book release. But if they do, I'll certainly be going on air to promote my book even more vehemently than before. But please, it's up on Amazon at the moment. I'm sure it's out in other retailers as well, if you can find it. Overthrowing Cricket's Empire. Abhishek and I worked on it together. So please go and buy that. But let's finish this podcast before we both die.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you to everyone who came in the comments and sent all of those super chats. Just a quick reminder, if you want access to all of our written work, our videos and our podcasts, you can go to goodareas.co, bookmark that webpage. That can be your one-stop shop for all of the work that we do over here. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Overthrows. That is all for now. So you guys have a good one. And yeah, goodbye. And those of you who are with us on the YouTube transmission, you guys can stay tuned. We're going to be taking a short ad break and we'll be back with episode 88 of the Uncovered podcast. You with Behram and Jared. Stay tuned.
If you need a VPN, go Nord. Use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months, plus gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. Protect your computer like a blocker protects the stumps with NordVPN today.
Celebrate your cricket heroes with Bodyline t-shirts. Explore their player-inspired tees, featuring legends like Sachin Tendulkar, Brian Lara, and Viv Richards. They also have team-inspired designs and options for hardcore cricket nerds. Their collection is a must-have for the true cricket enthusiast.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 88 of the Uncovered podcast. I'm Behram Kazi, who you can find at Def Mango on Twitter, and with me is Jared Kimber, as always, who you can find literally everywhere. And we've got not a lot of things to talk about in this particular episode of Uncovered because the T20 World Cup is ongoing, so there's only so much news going around. But one of the topics is actually directly linked to this T20 World Cup, Jared, and we saw Sri Lankan spinner Mahesh Theekshana complain about the travel times that Sri Lanka have had to, experience. They were in a hotel that was 90 minutes away from the ground in New York in Nassau County. And also they are playing in 4 different venues. They've gotten stuck at airports. They have to wake at 5 a.m. in the morning. And it's been quite ruthless in terms of getting around. And he's just gone out and complained about that. And I feel like that's quite brave.
Yeah, I mean, quite often a team will just get screwed over at a World Cup. Or it happens in franchise cricket as well. These are hard things to schedule. It does feel to me that, so South Africa has played 3 games in New York, and Sri Lanka is bouncing around everywhere. So I suppose if you're playing 3 games on 1 wicket and that wicket doesn't suit you, like if New Zealand got stuck in Guyana for 3 games, they would also be like, this hasn't gone very well. So there's always something to complain about if you're an international cricketer. And that's not to say he shouldn't be complaining about it either, right? I think it's a fair thing to come out. But I think New Zealand complained about the fact that they didn't get the practice under Guyana at Guyana under lights before they played there. So it's these things are never perfect. Everyone was at a friggin' IPL 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, New Zealand had the option of playing a warm-up game, right?
Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Didn't take it.
It's just none of these things work out perfectly the way that you want it to. That's not the reason that Sri Lanka is losing. They got caught on a tricky wicket and then should have won the other game as well. But I think it's also okay for Theekshana to say, we shouldn't be treated this way. And I do think sometimes some of the schedules don't really make sense. But it is not an easy tournament to come up with a schedule for. But I think we can all say, based on the times and the locations and everything else, that
there are like 4 different time slots or 5 different time slots for games. I have had the weirdest sleeping patterns throughout this tournament. It's been weird.
No, there's no. I mean, everyone's like that, right? Anyone following the tournament, not in the USA or in that time zone, has been like, "What the hell? When is the games happening?" Then you get up for a game and there isn't even a game at that time, and you're like, "What? They've just decided not to use this time slot today." So it's all. I could understand a player being frustrated by that, which is fair.
Yeah, I mean,
that's cricket.
I think it's a very valid complaint that Theekshana had. And for instance, in football, you see this all the time. the managers of teams, club football, they'll be complaining about the schedule all the friggin' time. So this is a sport issue, not just
Yeah.
a cricket issue.
American sports call it a schedule loss, right? And I do
Yeah.
that sometimes on even on for IPL teams and other T20 leagues I've covered, where I was just like, yeah, we're going to lose this game because we're traveling from Guyana to blah blah blah. Then at 4 a.m. and we're playing a game that night. We're probably going to lose that game. We need to get that in our head, right? This is not done for the athletes to perform in their optimum. It is done to get ratings and to make money. And sometimes the athletes just have to go out and perform. And unfortunately, Sri Lanka haven't done that.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. What do you think is easier, playing back-to-back T20Is at the same venue, or traveling with a day in between and then playing, one day after?
It probably depends on different players, right? Fast bowlers don't really like getting on planes. Anyone with a stiff back doesn't really want to be on a plane or hanging around. You lose a training day as well. It's very hard to do a training on a day where, especially, it's different if you've got like a 1 hour flight from Melbourne to Sydney. But if you've got a legitimate flight or it's an international flight or anything like that, that's pretty much your day gone. In the 2 hours you have to get there beforehand and waiting for your bags and everything at the other end. So to answer your question, this is the point. There is no optimal, right? Yeah. They both suck. And let's say, I'm trying to think of who's a better team. Let's say Bangladesh had to play 3 games, their 3 most important games at New York, right? That's not a pitch that probably suits them particularly well, that they would want to be playing all their games on, right? When they could be playing in Guyana or Barbados, right?
Yeah.
They'd much rather play, be island hopping and traveling around and have a terrible schedule and play on the wickets that help them than stay on the pitch that doesn't. So you've got to factor that in as well. It's just... I'm on Tikshana's side because I've had to do these shit schedules before, and I know exactly what it's like. But that is professional sport now.
Yeah, I also feel like he probably got super pissed off when they were held at like an airport for 8 hours. That delay probably killed Tikshana, but his rant prompted Pakistan's or the PCB's chairman Mohsin Naqvi to change the hotel of Pakistan in Nassau County, in New York. They were 90 minutes away, and now they were 10 minutes away from the ground, which is why they only lost by 6 runs, Jared. Otherwise, it would have been 60 versus India.
Yeah, look, we've seen this sort of stuff before, and I've stayed with I've stayed near a ground in a nice hotel, and the players are like an hour and a half away in certain places, and you do think to yourself, how has this happened? But you got to remember that for world events, there's a lot of regulations of what kind of hotels that you need to stay in. I remember I was almost brought in to help with the global T20 at one stage because all the players were rioting because the pool didn't have the facilities that the players needed. Sorry, the pool, no, the hotel, sorry, but didn't have a pool was one of the things. So they couldn't go into the pool afterwards and sit in the water for hours, and it didn't have an adequate gym, and there was something else that it didn't have, and things like that. Finding a hotel like that will block off a room, that will allow ACSU to work with your security. Do you know what I mean? There's actually a lot of details with that. But let's be honest, you shouldn't be 90 minutes away from a ground. I'm not a big fan. I don't know that much about Nassau County, but all
especially
I can say
Jared, when the games are at 10 a.m. in the morning, right? That complicates things.
Yeah, look. And again, nothing is perfect, and this is a very good example of that.
Yeah. I mean, in the last Uncovered podcast, we talked about how the scheduling and the ticket pricing and all of that stuff has been quite poor. And that's cricket for you. You mentioned how we just get what we get, right? It's not like the sport is optimally run.
I always am amazed that we have a World Cup.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on to our next talking point, Dambulla's franchise in the LPL.
They're back.
You were away on vacation when this came up the first time, but their owner Tamim Rahman was arrested by the police on charges of corruption. So he lost the franchise, and the franchise was ownerless for a bit. But the LPL said that they'll get another owner, and the franchise will be back. So, excuse me, guys, if I mispronounce this, but Sequoia Consultants, based out of Los Angeles, Sequoia. God help me, I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm going to go with Sequoia. So Sequoia Consultants, based out of Los Angeles, have bought Dambulla's franchise, and They've been Dambulla Aura. They've been Dambulla Giants. They've been Dambulla Vikings. Now they are the Dambulla Sixers. What do you make of this story?
Spell that out to me again. S-E-Q.
Sequuoia. That's a lot of vowels. That's all the vowels.
So I've got a feeling I know these people.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. I've got a feeling that I had a bunch of meetings with them, maybe to invest in 99.94.
Oh.
It just, the minute you said it, I was like, wait a minute, I know that. But maybe I've known from somewhere else. I'd have to go through my emails. But this gets even more random because at one stage, Sri Lankan Cricket were looking at running that team themselves. And I was also contacted by someone to help come in. So I wasn't that far off from being, I don't even know what job I would have had with the Dambulla, whatever they were going to be called.
Sixers.
But I was, one of the things I was trying to do was help them with a list of who they needed to hire to run a league and try and find a coach. And I even contacted a couple of coaches for them to see if anyone was free. So yeah, okay. This is all quite random, but it's maybe this is better that it's gone the way that it has. Maybe this is a positive, and good luck to Sequoia. And I'm going to be checking my emails right after this podcast to see if those were the guys I was thinking of.
Yeah, maybe they were. Let me know if they were. Do you think this is a better or worse situation than all that went down in the BPL with the ownership changes and that stuff?
Sadly, there's a lot of bad. There's a lot of bad ownership throughout the World Cup. Throughout T20 franchise leagues. I'd be lying to you if I said that this is that I'd be sitting there going that this is one of the worst. I suppose because there was a match fixing element, although, obviously we had issues even within the IPL when it came to that sort of stuff, but it is a little bit worse. I think it puts some of the players in a bad, what's the best way of putting it? It puts some of the players in a bad situation that they have been drafted to this team and the owner is involved with potentially fixing. So then are there not aspersions cast over those players?
True.
That they were brought in? And who knows if they had anything to do with it? They might not have even met the owner yet, right? And I don't know. I don't know if more will come out of it. But yeah, I think it's a bit icky for the players. Like that's something that you don't really want to be associated with in any way if you're not a fixer. And so it's a bit icky from that point of view. But yeah, we've had so many shit owners in T20 cricket at this point. I'm not sure that this is like any worse than any of the others. Maybe it should be, but whether it is, I don't know.
I mean, T10 is probably the very, very shady area of franchise cricket, right? So maybe it's not as bad as that. Anyway, time for us to take a short break. We have one more talking point on Uncovered this week. You're watching Uncovered with Jared and Behram, so stay tuned. We'll be back after this ad.
Good Areas is our other YouTube channel, and twice a week it covers the great cricket stories from today and from 200 years ago, like how a late 1800s blogger decided which games were tests, and that actually stuck. Also, why Ishant Sharma was one of the biggest comebacks we'd ever seen in our sport, and whether captaincy affects batting. For all of this and more, go to Good Areas twice a week. In cricket, we protected our groin a full century before we looked after our brain. So don't be like our sport. If you need a VPN, go Nord. Use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a huge discount on your NordVPN plan, plus 4 additional months for free. It's completely risk-free as well with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. Cricket wouldn't be the same without protection, and neither is your computer. Use NordVPN today.
Welcome back to Uncovered. You guys are with Jared and Behram. And originally, we did not have this talking point in our itinerary. We had Pat Cummins playing in the MLS instead. But when this came up, I was like, Subo, replace it. We need this one up ahead. There was an article on CricBuzz today. Vijay Tagore was the one reporting. And basically, we already knew that for the Champions Trophy 2025, Pakistan had proposed that there will be no hybrid model and India will play all of their games out of Lahore. because, Lahore has a border with India. It'll be easier to get them in, and then security can be provided to the Indian players with them not moving around too much. And as per the article, of course, this is still pending, a response from the BCCI, which technically means that they'll just say that we need to get clearance from the Indian government. So Jay Shah will have to talk to his dad, and we all know how that conversation goes. But the ICC has basically not, told Pakistan to, look at other options. They've told them to go ahead with these plans. We are already, in the summer. So this tournament is 6-7 months away. The last time the hybrid model was shoved down Pakistan's throat in the Asia Cup, it was extremely last minute. Can we expect something similar this time?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. I quote tweeted the tweet and I was like, I will believe it when the first ball is bowled.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not believing it.
I just don't. I mean, I would love for it to happen, and I would love for them to start playing bilaterals against each other again.
Yeah.
But with the BJP's power within Indian cricket and where it is politically, some of the comments you still get on here, right? It's just, we're just not there. And
yeah,
I think sometimes you have to think of worst case scenario as well. Like, I don't think there's going to be an attack on the Indian team or anything like that, but there doesn't actually have to be an attack. There just has to be a couple of some loudmouth idiot who has too many followers suggests that the Indians shouldn't be coming to Pakistan, and then it becomes a big deal. Then that gets replayed 33,000 times in India. Then someone in India says, how dare this team go, they're not patriotic enough because they're going to Pakistan. And then I just see it going so horribly. Now, I don't know in this social media age how it will ever happen again. And maybe that's part of the issue, is there's just so much toxicity now that it won't happen.
Yeah.
But I don't see it happening now.
Yeah. I honestly never thought that the Champions Trophy could be held in Pakistan entirely, even with a hybrid model. My worst fear is that they'll make Pakistan play 2 games in Pakistan, and then my worst fear is Pakistan will play a game in Pakistan, then go to Sri Lanka, then play a game in Pakistan, then go to Sri Lanka, which happened in the Asia Cup, right? Which is Theekshana's worst nightmare. Let's just put it that way. And the only thing that bothers me is that why not just clear the air prior so that things don't have to happen last minute? Because, as someone who works in the media in Pakistan, it would give me a lot of clarity as opposed to me just waiting for things to happen, not knowing, how things are going to go down.
You haven't worked in cricket long enough, because, I've received rights deals with commentary and, all sorts of things 4 days before tournaments start. Right, it's just this is how the sport works, and a big part of it is because this is how India works, right? India is a more last-minute nation than some of the other nations when it comes to organizations and how they do things.
Yeah, we know that from their own the ODI World Cup that they hosted. So many things were last minute. Dates were changed. Tickets. So
if they're the most important team, then cricket is last minute. But cricket is kind of last minute and kind of haphazard on top of that as well. They don't care about the broadcast. Oh, sorry. They don't care about the journalists. They don't care about the traveling fans, right? That's just, we have to be honest. They don't. Yeah. What they do care about is the broadcasters. So the broadcasting thing will become interesting. But at the same time, it's not India's event. So if the broadcasters get a little bit upset, maybe India are like, but India do make a ton of money off those events. So, they don't want to go upsetting everyone who's going to spend money on them in the future. But I just don't think we're there. I would love, it's a shame that when Pakistan were really good, that Pakistan and India didn't play a test series against each other. True. Right? I don't care about the bilateral ODIs, but or anything like that. They can keep playing at World Cups whenever they want to. But, it's a shame that they haven't, with the World Test Championship, isn't seen as a World Cup. And so they don't play each other, through that and all those sorts of things. But that's where we are. And, just, it's a bit like with Theekshana before. I'm on board. It's Sankalp, it might have been in the last podcast, was talking about, Sandeep Lambert. I'm on board with a lot of these things, but the world does not work to our particular whims, which is very, very sad, because I have some excellent whims.
Yeah. Also, if someone from the BCCI is watching, or the Indian government, look, if you do play bilaterals and test series with Pakistan, you will win. And you will fix that head-to-head record, right? Think about that. It's just some food for thought. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't see any positive news. And I'm already mentally preparing myself for the Champions Trophy to go to shit last minute, and we barely get any games in Pakistan. That's my default assumption. Let's see if things change. There was an election recently in which I think the BJP did not get the majority. Maybe that has some sort of impact on how cricket is run in India.
I don't think they had the majority before, though, did they? I think they just.
I mean, my Indian friend, my really good Indian friend, who I will not name, told me that maybe there's a chance Jay Shah loses his job. But I was like,
okay,
nah.
yeah. Sorry, I see what you mean there. Yeah. I suppose it'd be really interesting because BJP. I don't think I've ever seen outside of Imran Khan, but that doesn't quite count. But I don't think I've ever seen a political party. Maybe Mugabe would be the last one that is as intertwined with a cricket board. So it isn't that cricket has been used politically by Australia and England and many countries, right? Like I'm not saying that it hasn't been used politically. It's friggin' empire building, right? But I don't know if I've ever seen a political party, not a government, but just a political party be so interested in it. So I don't know how you unwind that. But maybe in India, what happens is if another government or, it changes or whatever the powers may be, or different politicians come in, even from the BJP, who are just like, can we just let cricket be cricket and we're going to go do this thing? Maybe things change a little bit there. I'm not sure. But it's fascinating. But yeah, Champions Trophy. I'd be shocked if all the games are played in Pakistan.
Should it be a T20 competition instead of an ODI competition?
I don't think Champions Trophy should exist, so maybe I'm the wrong person to ask on this. It will be a T20 competition eventually, right? So
eventually,
it doesn't really matter if it's now or next time. It's gonna happen. It gets a little bit tricky with T20 though, because if T20 is at the Olympics and it's Champions Trophy and it's a World Cup, it just gets a little bit ickier. And even the Olympics might be going, wait a minute. So keeping it as one day might work for a little while, but eventually it's gonna, I don't know. We don't even know how long the 50 over World Cup is going to be going, let alone the Champions Trophy.
That's true. And the Champions Trophy, I'm surprised it's all like, how has it survived?
It hasn't survived. They cancelled it and it came back. It's a friggin' zombie, man.
After 8 years, it's going to be back. And weirdly enough, Pakistan, if they do get to play at home, they'll be defending that title at home. Also, if any of you viewers and listeners want to learn more about the BJP's association with the BCCI, read the Shada Ugra piece on Wisden. Anyway, that wraps up this episode of Uncovered. We don't have any super chats, do we? Oh, we do. We do. Let's take those super chats and then we shall call it a day. Anmol Shrivats, for the 4th time, I believe, today, says, how does the Indian election result affect global cricket? How closely was it being watched from that angle? I don't think it was being watched from that angle in particular, but it impacts Indian cricket. So automatically it kind of impacts global cricket.
I think we just answered that, didn't we, Anmol? Sorry, we didn't see your question. It does, because as I said, the direction that it's all going to go and how it's going to become up. But as I said, the party is so intertwined with cricket. And, Shada wrote that piece, but it's something I've been noticing for a long, long time, that had been coming in and coming in more and more. And so it's so intertwined, I don't know how it goes. But as power shifts in India in general, and it's not just this election, as it shifts, other people will get more interested. Eventually, maybe someone will come in and just be like, oh, it needs to be independent. I don't know. Maybe Gautam Gambhir will end up being prime minister one day, and then he'll do an Imran Khan type of thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are so many different angles to it, but I do think everything that happens in India, right, is really, really important. I find it very, very interesting that they're still advertising. What are those things called? The photos that people paid a lot of money for that you own.
NFTs.
Yeah, they're still advertising NFTs. And a friend of mine said that's because people in India are still buying them. So I think in the rest of the world, NFTs are not quite as big, but for whatever reason, they've hung on a little bit more in India. And this is someone from inside the house telling me this. I don't know if this is based on fact, but the truth is that, like, a lot of the rest of the world still runs on emails, right? But India runs on, OTP and WhatsApp and Telegram and those sorts of things. that's where cricket will follow whatever India does, because that is the biggest marketplace. And, you know, that's no different than any sport.
Yeah, they are the USA of cricket, and capitalism is the main sort of, what would you call it? Construct that we kind of live by in the world. All right, last super chat then. Path right winger. Oh, there's my man. I missed you, Path. Didn't see a question from you earlier, so I'm glad you have one now. He says, Babar Azam said post-match, pitch looked decent. Ball was coming on nicely. It was a little bit slow, and some balls bounced extra. What the hell is he talking about? What pitch did he bat on? Is that what he said? I read something different.
I didn't see that at all. Didn't Rohit? I thought Rohit said something on the first game where he didn't think it was that big of a deal as well. Look, it's not a good pitch. I mean,
Definitely not a good pitch. Also, I think Babar said that we were targeting 40 to 45 runs in the power play, but we played too many dot balls. So it was a very vanilla answer.
Yeah, I didn't see that with Babar Azam, but I can tell you what the players are saying privately, and they are like, "Why are we having to play on this pitch? It's a club pitch. It is not an international pitch." And anyway, we're about to go do a whole podcast on it. So Baron
absolutely. So thank you for your question, Path, and everyone else who gave us or sent us super chats and interacted with us in the comments. And
one
just
more
a
from
quick,
Path just came in.
Path has another one. He says, went to college in Bangalore. Spent countless hours eating Nandini Dairy's Choco Bars, which is a local brand owned by Karnataka state government. Any idea why they're advertising on Ireland cricket team jerseys? Wow. No, I do not.
Well,
that's crazy.
UAE had Indian sponsors before, so we have had Indian sponsors on other teams at World Cups before.
And Daraz, I think, which is a Pakistan firm, has been Bangladesh's sponsor. Afghanistan have Etisalat, which is, I think, the phone company in the UAE. These things happen, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite common now. And you know, are more people in Ireland going to watch a World Cup, or are more people in India going to watch a World Cup? Right.
True.
Even when Ireland's playing, and that's the same with anything like that. You have to think about where the money is coming from, and it's a lot cheaper if India are playing Ireland, right? It's cheaper to sponsor Ireland than it is India.
That is definitely true. Anyway, that wraps up this episode of Uncovered. Thank you to everyone in the comments. And just a quick reminder, you guys can go to goodareas.co, bookmark that webpage, and it can prove to be a one-stop shop for all the work that we do as a team, whether it be written work, podcasts, or videos. And thank you once again for turning up. Whoever's still with us from the start to end, you guys are legends. We'll be back with another episode of Uncovered next week. That is all for today. Goodbye.
Support us on Patreon and help us keep making our content. Join for exclusive perks like the AMAs, the live calls, and to chat with me directly on Discord. You can also enjoy ad-free content, early podcasts, and access to my emailer. Step up your cricket style game with Bodyline t-shirts. Explore their exclusive player-themed t-shirts, including favorites like Virat Kohli, Kane Williamson, and Ben Stokes. They also have team-inspired designs and options for hardcore cricket nerds. Their collection offers something unique for every fan.